Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the Next Gen Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform known only as iRacing on the PC. Tonight marks round 7 of the 12-round calendar, the continuation of round 7 we should say, and our schedule for tonight is as follows. Times in a British summertime, that is BST or UTC +1. In just under 15 minutes time we'll begin underway with our qualifying session. That will be at 8 o'clock, and that will be the 20-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of race number 1, the sprint race, which will follow immediately after at 8:20. That'll be a 15-minute race where the only strategy is to get to the front of your respective class and finish the winner, and if you can, pick up the fastest lap as well, because that'll be 2 extra bonus points to go into the kitty. After that, we'll be taking a brief break of approximately what will be a 10-minute break or so before returning at approximately 5 to 9 tonight for the build-up to the feature race, the second of our 2 races this evening, and that will be the full 1-hour race whereby our drivers will have that strategic aspect of knowing when to take their mandatory scheduled pit stop thrown into the mix, as well as wanting to be at the front of the field first and foremost. It is the case that with the reverse grid, with the pit stop, there's plenty of conundrums for them to solve, and it will be who emerges on the other end with the smarts and also the pace to take the win. Now, of course, we're taking a look back tonight at Lobby 2, as sponsored by IMB Raceware. There being 2 lobbies in this series. Both lobbies, Lobby 1 and Lobby 2, having raced on Wednesday earlier this week, and that was Wednesday the 25th of May. But we can only bring you 1 lobby on the Wednesday, so we take a look back at Lobby 2 as always on the following Friday. And, well, we're taking a look back. It is the case that tonight's broadcast is being brought to you live via one of 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and search for Next Gen Racing, and you can tune in there. Alternatively, if you are a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing, and you can take a look at there. Or last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. Who is TX141? Well, that's me, your commentator and host. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight, and indeed over the course of the entire series. Now, I should clarify, of course, whilst we are taking a look back at the racing that occurred earlier this week, I have not seen any of the races. I don't know the results, and I can also promise you that this is not a pre-recorded show. The racing may technically be pre-recorded, but my reactions and everything along those lines will not be pre-recorded whatsoever, so therefore, whatever happens tonight will be a surprise to me, and I'm sure it will be to many of you out there tuning in as well. But before we can come on to rules, regulations, championship standings and the schedule and whatnot, we must briefly take a pause to introduce our title sponsor for Lobby 2, that is IMB Raceware. Let's introduce them and give them the fair introduction they deserve. So IMB Raceware, in short, who are they and what do they stand for? Well, IMB Raceware delivers raceware for both sim and real-life racers, which enables the racer to make the impact they've always wanted. What sets IMB Raceware apart from the competition, however, is that their raceware provides itself on individuality, as it is designed for you by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf raceware products. Whether you are looking for racing gloves, racing shoes, or team clothing, from shirts through to jackets, there are no limits to levels of customization available. And if you want to know more and get your hands on your own bespoke raceware today, be sure to head to imbraceware.com. That website again, imbraceware.com. And well, IMB Raceware working with us to run Lobby 2, working with us in the background, and also contributing to the sizable prize pool on offer for Lobby 2, and their contribution going to the GT3 class winners in particular, whereby each winner in the GT3 classes, where it's the GT3 PRO or the GT3 AM classes, there'll be a set of custom gloves up for grabs for our GT3 class winners, and that will also go on top of the cash prize pool, the value of which is yet to be determined. Meanwhile, for our LMP2 AM class drivers in this lobby, it is the case they will have just the cash prize pool, the value of which to be determined, and that is based on the entry fees and also the backing contribution from Next Gen Racing Official itself. But we're very grateful to be working with IMB Raceware in this extended partnership, and well, many forward returns to that partnership between Next Gen Racing and IMB Raceware, and thank you to them once again. Now, we look forward to the calendar, and it is the case that going into round 7 tonight, you can see we are now on the right-hand side of the calendar, whereby we have completed the first half of the championship season. We started all the way back on what was the 6th of April at Watkins Glen, beginning our tour of the North American continent. Watkins Glen was the first round, followed by the roller coaster ride that was Road Atlanta, and then the Canadian equivalent in round number 3, that was Mosport, or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, before making our way to Daytona Road Course for what was our first of 3 2-hour 2-hour Super Endurance rounds. After that, we took a week's break before making our way onto the European continent and starting off the second third of the season at the Red Bull Ring on the 11th of May in Austria, and then we went to Germany last time out the Hockenheimring. Plenty of drama, battles up and down the field, and indeed many a surprise at the Hockenheimring. And today we are at Monza, of course, and the racing occurred on the 25th of May. We're bringing you a lobby tour on the 27th of May, and after today at the Slipstream Festival circuit, it will be the case that we'll be heading to Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time for round number 8 to bring down the curtain on the second third of the season with the second of our Super Endurance rounds. It'll be 2 hours of racing at Spa-Francorchamps, which will kick off on the 1st of June. After that, we've taken a week's break before returning for one last third of this series, and that will be starting with round number 9 at Silverstone on the British Isles in the United Kingdom on the 15th of June, and then we'll be heading all the way over to the Asia-Pacific region for the Japanese circuit of Suzuka on the 22nd of June, before returning to the European continent for the final 2 rounds. Nürburgring on the 29th of June, and then the final round will be at Le Mans, or Circuit de la Sarthe as it's known in full, on the 6th of July, the final of our 3 2-hour Super Endurance rounds, and what a place to bring it all to a close. We'll be bringing the curtain down at the French circuit later on this year. And well, indeed, batting for the big prizes and looking to do their best over the course of the calendar, it's only right that we come onto our drivers and the Drivers' Championship standings as they now stand. So after 6 rounds of racing, it is the case that Stephan Wessels in the LMP2 AM class, which we start off with as always, is leading at the moment by a margin of 44 points over Sam Holman there in P2. The gap between the two of them has shrunk slightly compared to last week, although it should be said that Wessels there had a very difficult day at the Hockenheimring. Race is not going his way, and as a result, he'll be looking to bounce back and try to pick up the perfect possible result, or he would, but unfortunately was not able to take part as of Monza, so therefore we will not be seeing Stephan Wessels take to the circuit due to personal circumstances, but I can promise you he's all well and he'll be back for round number 8, but he's unable to make it tonight. That means that everybody else in the championship standings has a major opportunity in attendance tonight to be able to close the gap to the very fast and voracious South African, where it be Sam Holman in P2, who's only 1 point ahead of Paul Walton, and all eyes will of course be on Paul Walton for the simple reason he really has been the dominant force since he's arrived on the scene full time in this series, picking up a perfect score last time out the Hockenheimring. Can he make it another perfect day at the Italian circuit at Monza tonight on 201 points there? We then have a sizable gap of almost 70 points back to Michael Price, 67 to be exact. The P4 driver there, really the best of the rest, and unable to take part last time out of the Hockenheimring. And if he's able to make it tonight, we do look forward to seeing him out on circuit, as he is only ahead of Paul Scott, who's in P5 right now, based on result countback, both on 134 points. A further point back, making his return to the series last time out the Hockenheimring, Paul Williams from Team Tetrage there in P6, with a great performance seeing him move all the way up to 133 points, now closing onto the top 5. He is 6 points ahead of Jim Stanton there, who in turn is 5 points ahead of P8 driver Baz Meacham, or Barry Meacham as he's known in full. Mark Baker P9 ahead of Richard Stanton P10, and then we have Jonathan Collins only a further 5 points over the top 10 on 113 points ahead of Jack Wybom. But you can see how close it is really in that contest to be in the top 10 and to battle all the way up to P4 in the championship. And how will it all turn over come the end of tonight's 2 races? The complexion, meanwhile, of the GT3 PRO Championship is a little bit different. We have 2 runaway championship leaders. However, it is the case we do have a third driver who's starting to emerge back onto the scene. Lucas Romano, after a brilliant pair of races and indeed taking the maximum possible points all last time out at the Hockenheimring, and now is your championship leader on 239 points, but he's only 9 ahead of his main rival, Jeremy De Boever, who had a difficult day at the Hockenheimring, particularly in the sprint race where it all went wrong and he lost some critical points. Diede De Vlaeminck, however, his teammate from the Challenge by DB1, is closing on the top 2. The gap between himself and his teammate Jeremy De Boever now only 18 points, and he'll be looking to try and get back into that title fight come the end of tonight with a great performance. Peter Lemkins in P4, really the best of the rest, is the RP Motorsport driver there on 176, 4 ahead of Dirt Bounce, his fellow RP Motorsport Pro Am driver, and Sean Scudder in P6 just outside the top 5 there, and by a sizable margin now, the delta between the two being 47 points, and Sean Scudder needing to find that revival form which saw him end up in the GT3 Season 2 so well, but he's not quite been on the ball so far. Gus Rankin a further 7 points back in P7, 108 points, and it's Matthew Proughton and Lamont Wedder who complete the championship standings there. But meanwhile, in the GT3 AM Championship, it is the case that much like the GT3 Pro Championship, we have 2 major championship contenders right at the top. Tristan Dino Brega, the South African driver, retaking the lead of the championship last time out based on the results of the Hockenheimring, picking up a near-perfect evening, albeit splitting the major points with his fellow Racing Team Astra driver, Lorenzo Gualtieri there. But before we come to Lorenzo Gualtieri, it is the case that Navarro De Boever, the youngster, hot on the heels of Tristan de Nobrega by only 4 points, and will be looking to come back strong today with the counter-attack. Lorenzo Gualtieri, in P3 there, a sizable distance of 50 points off of the top 2, and he'll be looking to have a stronger performance tonight in order to close the gap, or will he be reeled back in by Arjun Kregel in P4 there on 171 points, who is only 2 ahead of Davide Favo. Mark Sykes on 169 points, like Davide Favo, but outside the top 5 only based on result count back in P6, with James Slates a further 9 points behind on 160, and it's Kurt Van Hoenacker and Elwin Sykes ahead of Gareth Mills to complete the top 10, with Liam Tack, Chris Keenan and Mark Arrowsmith completing your championship standings to the GT3 AM class. Now, meanwhile, in the Teams Championship, in the Mark Sykes Designs Team Standings Championship, it is the case that going into tonight, RP Motorsport Pro-Am lead by only a single point over Verano Motorsport. Keep in mind, of course, that some of these teams are split across Lobby 1 and Lobby 2. Some teams are localised to a single lobby, but it is the case that RP Motorsport Pro-Am and Verano Motorsport battling for the big points, with RP Motorsport Pro-Am being localised to Lobby 2, the IMB Raceware lobby, and Verano Motorsport being localised to the Apex Racing Academy lobby, that's Lobby 1. But Racing Team Astra Blue are not too far behind, only at 4 points off of the top 2, and NXTGEN Racing really leading the charge as best of the rest in P4, ahead of their sister outfit NXTGEN Racing with Sam Case's UK in P5. McChange by DB1 there in P6, only a further 14 points off of the top 5, with McChange by DB2 a sizable delta behind on 393 points, and they are only ahead of Racing Team Astra Team Orange based on result countback. Team Racing Netherlands and RD Simsport complete the top 10, with Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks 11 points off of the top 10 in P11, and Excite Racing giving a hot pursuit to them there in P12, ahead of CXR Project Black and Hilliard Esports. DRS Esports LMS1 P15, they're only 5 points ahead of RP Motorsport Seniors, with Team Tetrarooge in P17, ahead of TGC Racing, Alshid Esports and Crest Autosport Ferrari completing the top 20, and outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about, Hollerton Racing in P21, ahead of MRC Team, BRM, TGC Bottom Split Heroes and DRS Esport LMS2 completing the Team Standings Championship. Well, that's enough about the points. Now let's come on to the circuit we're at tonight, our host venue. Well, we are tonight at the Autodromo Nacional di Monza, or Monza in short, the Italian circuit, nicknamed the Cathedral of Speed or the Temple of Speed, depending on who you talk to. And as you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, this circuit located near the town of Monza in Italy, a very fast circuit, one of the highest average lap speeds of any on our calendar, for the simple reason that this circuit can be summarised as a set of straights split by chicanes and medium speed apex sweepers, whereby we do have the run all the way down the start finish straight down towards the first of the chicanes, that's the Rettifilio chicane of Prima Variante, and then it's the run through a Curva Pisano, alternatively, well, I'm trying to remember, the Curva Grande it is also known as, before the run all the way up to the second chicane, Seconda Variante, also known as the Regia chicane, turns 4 and 5, and then we have the 2 Lesmos, the 2 medium speed apexes, turns 6 and 7, which lead on to the Curva del Seraglio, the Seraglio curve, or the Seraglio straight as it's also known, or in the run down towards the third and final chicane of Ascari, and then we have Curva Parabolica or Parabolica curve, which completes the lap at turn number 11. Now, as for our rules for tonight, we're using the same rules as normal, with the case that our drivers will be running the iRacing sprint setup for tonight's races. This is a fixed setup series, of course. Our drivers in the sprint race shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and the grid shall be separated into car classes, starting approximately 5 seconds apart. In the feature race, meanwhile, it is the case that the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. The grid shall be separated into car classes, starting approximately 5 seconds apart, with the LMP2 starting ahead of the GT3s. There should be one mandatory pit stop in the feature race, requiring drivers to take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. Each driver shall have one fast repair available, and last but not least, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. And we were getting that wrong over the broadcast leading up to now, where we kept saying it was 20 or more instant points. We've had it corrected, it is 25 or more instant points. But that's enough about rules and regulations. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing, so let's head back to those live pictures in the build-up to what is the qualifying session here, and we can see the majority of our drivers now parked in the pit lane, getting ready to go racing here, and those who are still out on the circuit just getting that last little bit of lap time, including Paul Williams here for Team Tetrarooge, who made that brilliant comeback into the series at the Hockenheimring with that stellar set of performances, particularly that second place in the feature race last time out, and can he make it another set of podiums today? we will have to wait and see after missing out on the double podium with that P4, of course, in the sprint race. But as we get the transition over to qualifying here, it is the case we have 20 minutes to decipher who is going to be where on the grid, and the timer kicks off now as all drivers will be making their way out of the pit lane in very short order. And as they do, we will wait and see who is going to be the fastest of them all in each of the classes. We see RD Simsport's Paul Walton making his way out of the pit lane immediately here, and the RD Simsport driver really the favourite to be up there on pole and take all the points and prizes, particularly in the absence of Stephan Wessels. Not to say that something cannot occur. We do know that Walton is prone to a mishap or two. We saw at the Red Bull Ring, for example, in the feature race, where he was able to pin the car up on one of the outside barriers, which saw him have to drop all the way down the order right at the end of the race with 5 minutes to go. But in the absence of Stephan Wessels, I do wonder whether it's going to be the Paul Walton show tonight, and it'll be about everyone battling for P2 and further down in the LMP2 AM class. But we will wait and see about that, as we do see Jim Stanton here making his way up towards the second chicane and building up a lot of speed. But in the meantime, it is the case we check in with the chat, and of course do keep in mind, whether you're on Facebook, Twitch, Facebook, Twitch, almost said Twitter there, alternatively YouTube, it is the case we can see all three chats, and do not be shy, feel free to say hi as you tune in tonight, and let me know who you're rooting for and who your bets are on tonight with regards to picking up the all-important points and prizes. But as our drivers make their way in their warm-up laps right now, we say hello in the YouTube chat to Tristan Dina Brega, and also to Paul Walton Senior, and also there to Darren Doherty. We also say hello in the Twitch chat to Attack Ali. Good evening to you, fellow Spud, as well, as he says good evening, my fellow Spuds. And also we say hello in the Facebook chat to Deborah Grant there, tuning in and wishing everyone good luck. But speaking of good luck, that's what Paul Walton Senior will be wishing at Paul Walton Junior here as he makes his way out the final corner, and we ride on board to give you our first onboard flying lap of this qualifying session. He makes his way across the timeline and heads all the way down towards turn 1. He's going to get the highest possible speed in the long run down towards the Redsvilio chicane, but he looks to his braking mark here. On the left, it'll be the 150 metre board and slamming on the anchors, coming all the way down the gearbox as aggressively as he dares. To first gear, goes a little bit deep past the apex of turn 1, but brings it back together nicely for turn 2, and that's all back getting on the throttle as early as possible and charging it up towards what is the Regia chicane. Going through Curva Grande here, turn at number 3, or Curva Castellano, and as he makes his way through, full flat out throttle here, going up through the gearbox, back up into 6th gear, and now looking at his brake mark on the right hand side, braking at about 130 metres, coming down to 1st gear, trying to straight line his way between the two apexes of the chicane, but getting back on the throttle as soon as possible there, and now in towards the more technical part, which is the two Lesmos, going through turn at number 6, as he rolls the car through in 2nd gear here, upshifting to 3rd, nice and early before charging it in towards the 2nd Lesmo, from 4th down to 2nd under braking, before getting back on the throttle immediately, and now back up through the gearbox once again as he charges down the Serraglio straight and heads up towards Discovery. Smooth lap so far by Walton. He's done half the lap, he's still got half of it to go as he makes his way into the braking zone here for Ascari, braking at the 100 metre board, coming down the 3rd gear and rolling the car through left, right, left here, flat out as he clears the midpoint of the apex of turn number 9, and that's the long run down towards turn at number 11 here, down the back straight, heading up towards what is parabolic curve, and will be able to nail it here on the final corner. It's been a very smooth lap so far. He's only got one more part of lap to go as he rolls the car through the apex here, and as he does, it's very collecty, just about keeps it in track limits and pulls the car to the right. And as Walton comes to the timeline here, what's it going to be for the opening flying lap of this session in the LMP2 AM class? It's a 36.939. Walton looking very good indeed. What about our other drivers out on the circuit? We do have Jim Stanton coming to the timeline here. He was purple in the first subsector, but everywhere else it's a personal best. It's a 37.8484 Stanton. More drivers coming on through, I do believe. Unless I'm mistaken, we do have the likes of Paul Scott. We also have Richard Stanton coming on through. Richard Stanton there going P4 on a 38.971. We have Paul Scott coming through on a 37.774, going for visual P2. But now we also do have our GT3 drivers starting to put their laps in, as we see Diede De Vlaeminck there, and also with Dirk Bouts nose to tail. And do keep in mind, of course, with this circuit consisting of so many straights, getting a good slipstream draft in qualifying is going to be critical. And some drivers will have it easier than others in finding that draft because they will have teammates who they can work with, whereas other drivers might be racing by themselves tonight. They may not have teammates out on the circuit. Alternatively, they are considered to be independent, where they're racing representing their own team rather than an official team in this series. and therefore they will have to try and find somebody they can pinch the toe off of, alternatively qualify by their lonesome. But if you're not able to find the draft, that can cost you all the way up to somewhere in the region of a whole second, depending on your car at this circuit, particularly in the GT3 class, but also, to be fair, in the LMP2 class, it is the case you gain a huge amount of time by having the slipstream of another car over the entirety of the lap. And we saw that in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week, whereby drivers were able to use that time, particularly the next-gen racing drivers we saw in there of what was Gaz Williams and also Jamie Dory working together. And that worked out very well for them in the LMP2 Pro class. And here today, as we see the next gen racing driver Mark Sykes make his way up into the Regina chicane here, he's quite on his lonesome at the moment. I think he's just trying to get a couple of banker laps in clean laps where he delivers his ultimate pace without the toe, without considering about the dirty error driver in front. I can tell you from experience doing qualifying laps around Monza, it is the case in a series such as this. Some drivers will feel more comfortable running the toe of another driver than others. Personally, as a sim racing driver myself, I do find I prefer to qualify without the toe of another car in front of me, either slipstream on the straights, just because I'm not keen on having to try and navigate the concept of turning the car into a corner earlier than normal because of the dirty air effect or the wash off of the back of the car in front of me. Because remembering the fact that when you run in the slipstream of another car, you get the dirty air, and therefore that disrupts the front aero balance of the car, and it means you have to brake slightly earlier to get the car to turn into apex on time. And that's what some of our drivers may be worried about, and therefore they may be deciding to put in some early laps here. Given the fact we have a 20-minute qualifying session, they'll want to put those laps in under what is no traffic and clear air. As we do see, we've got one driver off there, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Davide Favo into the wall. He's got it very wrong on the entry into Parabolica. We can't take a look back at that, unfortunately. It's gone wrong for Davide Favo, but meanwhile, where it's going right is for our GT3 AM Championship leader, and that is Tristan Dino Brega here, who's looking very good so far in this qualifying session as he rolls on through turn at number 3. And I believe he has the slipstream there, unless I'm mistaken, of what is Sean Scooter in front of him, the GT3 Pro driver. And, well, Dino Brega, I can definitely tell you, has been one of those drivers that since the start of this championship season, he's been inconsistent but very fast. But now, as we've moved in towards the second half of the season, or got close to it, the Hockenheimring, it is the case that consistency has also found its place within the car, the cockpit of that Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, and well, Dino Brega is absolutely on point with regards to his qualifying laps and the consistency over the race. And to answer Tristan Dino Brega's question there in the YouTube chat, keeping in mind, of course, ladies and gentlemen, as part of the broadcast, we do have post-round interviews of our drivers. We only have 2 out of 4 drivers having volunteered their time to do post-round interviews. So if any of our drivers who participated earlier this week are considering doing a post-round interview, there are 2 slots available for you, and do let me know via the Next Gen Racing official Discord, or drop me a private message over Discord, and we can make sure that you're part of the broadcast tonight. But still, as our drivers continue to make their way around, and we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Stock 3090 there, that's Nigel Stock, of course, in the YouTube chat, who raced and did very successfully in what was the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week. We continue to look to our drivers here, and we see Tristan Dino Brega coming into the pits, and meanwhile we do look to Liam Tack as he makes his way out to the final corner here, the GT3 Racing driver, the GT3M driver, who's really been building up each and every time he's taken to a circuit and building on that pace and that experience. We ride on board with him now as he takes us down the start-finish straight to go on to another flying lap in the GT3. So heading down towards the braking zone here, he'll be looking for his brake marker, 150 metres once again there as he stamps on the brakes, and as he rolls the car coming down to first gear, rolling the car through the chicane, nice and sensibly through, very collected there, smooth line, now going up through the gearbox here, up towards the Regina chicane. Charging all the way up there is the case as he comes on through the Ferrari, not quite as fast as say the Mercedes or the BMW M4 around here at Monza, particularly the straight, but it's the case the Ferrari will have good acceleration up to 5th gear, and from 5th gear onwards it will start to hit a bit of a wheel in terms of pace as he comes all the way down from 5th to 2nd, rolling through the Regina chicane, and as he makes his way through turns 4 and 5, a little bit of oversteer and exit there, the weight transfer of the rear of the car not quite being settled down before he got on the power, but he's brought the car back together as he rolls his way through Lesmo 1, a nice run through the 3rd gear corner, now heading up towards Lesmo 2, he'll go from 4th back down to 3rd, staying in 3rd there, takes a little bit too much speed into the apex and actually had to hesitate on putting the throttle back on corner exit there to avoid running onto the gravel. He's putting the front left wheel on the gravel, and that will send the car sideways if he did so, as he now makes his way down towards Serra Clio. In this case, looking for his brake mark, 100 metre board on the right, And as he comes down through the gearbox here, nice and smooth into Ascari, balancing the throttle, and you can see there how the rear of the car came round, and he got back on the throttle immediately to set the car, but he runs a little bit wide there, does Liam Tack, and just gets it wrong when it was looking to be a very fast lap, and it's all gone horribly wrong when he comes into the pits there. We can just see how sensitive these GT3 cars are, given the fact they do not have as much aerodynamic downforce as our LMP2s, as we look from one GT3 AM to another, and that's Jeremy De Boever making his way into the pits, and a number of them deciding to come on in, and well, in doing so, as we say hello to Jeremy De Boever in the YouTube chat, I think trying to put a little bit more fuel in the car and see if a bit more rubber goes down on the circuit to give them some improved lap time later on. Of course, a lot of our drivers now, as we complete the first half of this qualifying session, will be coming on in thinking where they can improve in the second half, and also looking to come out in clear air, alternatively in the slipstream train, as we look to right now Gus Franken making his way there through the first two Lesmos, and as he comes on through, Gus Franken, the Pro Am RP Motorsport driver, as he rolls through, I believe he's for RP Motorsport Pro Am, correct me if I'm wrong folks, but it is the case that right now the driver in the machine covered in bears. If you're wondering what those animals are on the car, I don't know the true story behind all the bears being all over that Mercedes, but I do know it's quite an innovative livery design. But the Mercedes driver here expecting to go strong today. Really, in terms of the run of form, we are expecting the Mercedes and the BMWs and the GT3 cars to be the stronger cars here due to their straight line speed, particularly the V8 grunt of the Mercedes. And as he makes his way out of Ascari and down towards Parabolica, where the Mercedes will feel the pain will be through the corners, particularly through direction changes. The car is prone to quite some heavy front end understeer, and Ascari is going to be where it will feel it the most. As he rolls his way through Parabolica here, looking good. You can see that getting back on the throttle nice and early. Two wheels within the white lines, that's what we like to see. And as he makes one out, he comes to the timeline, pulls the car all the way over to the right here to shorten the run to the timeline. And what will it be for Gus Franken as he crosses the line? I do not think that's in fact, he goes on to a lap, and we get now right on board with the Mercedes driver as he heads all the way down towards turns 1 and 2, breaking all the way down the gearbox here. And as he comes on through, will it be the case that we get to the end of this GT3 lap after what was the difficulties in getting an on-board GT3 lap in the qualifying session back in the Apex Racing Academy lobby? Well, fingers crossed Gus Franken takes us to the end. There's no reason why he shouldn't, as he makes his way here through what is Curve Grande, and as he heads on up toward the Virginia chicane, look at that brake mark. You'll see the difference in body language here under braking of the Mercedes versus the Ferrari. Watch how he has to very gradually bring the car on in, and a bit of understeer there, in fact taking a lot of apex curve, and well, he's gone very wrong, and Gus Franken parks it off circuit there and jumps back to the pits. It seems as though the commentator's curse is continuing to affect our drivers in qualifying, as nobody we've ridden with so far in the GT3 class has been able to finish the lap. As we do say hello there to Dirk Bounce, nicknamed Audi R8 in the YouTube chat, and hope you're doing well, Dirk. And we also see the point there from what is Liam Tack, or Tack Ali in the Twitch chat, saying that one day we'll get to follow a lap where he doesn't bin it, but not today. And indeed that is very unfortunate, but what I can tell you is very fortunate right now. Tristan Dino Brega has just gone fastest of everybody in what is the GT3 AM class and the GT3 class as a whole. I think he's had a bit of slipstream there to add to the lap, although that's not to take away. That is the master of the art here, of course, at Monza, is to find the slipstream at the right time on the lap, but he's just gone GT3 pole on what is a 48.466. And to give you an idea, the second place GT3 driver in the overall GT3 classification is this man here, the McChange by DB1 driver of Diede De Vlaeminck, who is a 10th down. Now, of course, one of the things we do have to keep in mind is that if Vlaeminck does find some slipstream in that Mercedes and able to utilise it over the course of the lap, that Mercedes will absolutely fly down the straights, and we can expect a reversal of those qualifying positions in due order. As we see Vlaeminck making his way there out to Lesmo 1 and in towards Lesmo 2. It is the case. We're not going to ride on board just in case the commentator's curve strikes again, but looking very smooth right now as he heads down towards Seraglio. As he comes right on down, all the way down towards what is turn number 8. He is looking smooth right now as he heads on down into that braking zone. And again, we'll see under braking here how he has to let the front end really settle down on the braking before he points the car into the apex, but very nicely done. And as he comes on through here now, flat out, he comes through 10, taking a little bit of the sausage curve. Of course, the Mercedes are able to take the curbs quite aggressively, much like the BMW M4, unlike a good number of our mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines, such as the Ferraris and particularly the Audis that struggle over curbs. The Lamborghini Huracan is a little bit different, however. that can take curves quite nicely. But as we see here, Vlaeminck making his way through what is the final corner. What will it be? Will he be able to open the gap to his teammate Jeremy De Boever, who is only 7 thousandths off him right now in the battle for GT3 Pro pole? And as they come across the line, we see Walton coming on through there, and Vlaeminck crosses the line. He does improve, and Vlaeminck does not quite take the GT3 pole overall. That is in the hands of Tristan Dino Brega by still a tenth of a second, with Dino Brega putting in another lap, going on to that 48.466. Vlaeminck meanwhile of 48.601, so just over a tenth delta between the two of them. But meanwhile, speaking of a driver who's on form as well, as he goes on to another lap, and we dare to ride on board with him, it is Lorenzo Gualtieri here in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, as he makes his way through the opening two corners and taking a huge amount of apex curve there at turn number 1, as we've got a car off there, and well, that is the end of a lap. My goodness, we keep seeming to jump on board with anybody who goes to abort a lap, and well, that was Chris Keenan in the Audi R8 getting things a little bit wrong there on the exit of what was the Rettifilio chicane, and the Audi R8 drivers had to settle it back down and start to build up towards another lap. As he makes his way on through, it is the case right now. Chris Keenan is currently P10, half a second off of Liam Tack in the battle for P9 in the GT3 class, but we'll wait to see how he gets on later in this qualifying session. But meanwhile, we talked a lot about our GT3 drivers. What's happening in the LMP AM class field, where we can see we do have 7 drivers currently in this qualifying session. Although I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering why Baz Meacham is not out on the circuit right now, he is having to deal with what is a qualifying ban, and I also believe it may be the case it's a sprint race ban as well for picking up too many instant points. And so if you remember that instant involving Baz Meacham and Sam Holman at the Hockenheimring down into turn number 2, well, the stewards did find Baz Meacham at fault, which we saw from our camera angles. It did look as though it was his fault in terms of the contact between the two of them, and that has led to him getting enough instant points to receive that qualifying ban, and I also believe what is a sprint race ban, unless I'm mistaken. That means, as a result, we only have 6 of our 7 LMP2 AM drives here today, taking to the circuit for qualifying, and we're looking at Paul Scott here as the next-gen racing driver, rolls his way out the opening chicane, currently P3 in class. He is 1.5 tenths down off of Team Tetraridge's Paul Williams, and can Paul Scott find a way to come on back? As he makes his way on through there, we do see a couple of questions in the YouTube chat, in particular from Darren Doherty, to say, is an AM out qualifying the pros? Indeed, at this point in time, it is Tristan Dino Brega who's going to out qualify the pros by 1.5 tenths on a 48.466 versus Diede De Vlaeminck in the pro class is 48.601. And well, that's Tristan Dino Brega really coming to form over the course of this season, as we're at the halfway point right now. He does seem to be the unstoppable force. But as they're rolling on around, it is the case that we can see here that Paul Scott looking very smooth on this lap so far. And in terms of his sector times, his subsector 2 has been up on his personal best so far, so he has set a personal best there. Everywhere else, he's been very close to his previous best. And as he rolls his way through at subsector 4 now, heading down, a little bit of the rear coming loose there. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but just a little bit of oversteer as he rolled his way through Ascari, but kept it nicely together, kept the car pointing in the right direction. And as he comes to the subsector line for sector 4, it is the case he's down on a personal best, so if he's going to be setting a faster lap, it's all going to come down to what he achieved in subsector 2, and also this final sector, the final corner, as he rolls to the line here. He's pulling over to the right, so I think Paul Scott thinks he's got a better lap, and he does improve to a 37.096. That moves him to P2 ahead of Paul Williams, who's still in the pits. And as he makes his way on through, it is the case we do see a little bit further down Jim Stanton here, currently P4, 2 tenths off of Paul Williams. And can one of the 2 Stanton brothers find their way into P3 right now? And of course, Richard Stanton would love to get himself on that second row. If they could lock out a row together, that would really benefit them when they go into the race, because they can work together very closely. But we'll have to wait and see whether that is possible, given the fact that right now it does look as though Richard Stanton's quite a bit off of the pace of everybody else within the class, being the best part of 6.5 tenths down on Jonathan Collins, who's P5, and it is the case Richard Stanton P6. But as Jim Stanton here makes his way into the final corner, as we hear Chris Keenan has improved his personal best to a 50.463 in P10 in the GT3 AM class, we do see here Jim Stanton coming on through. He pulls over to the right. He's not coming into the pits as close. He dares that pit wall. He crosses the line, and in the end, it's not an improvement for Stanton. He'll have to go once or twice more if he wants to improve. He'll just get another 2 laps in based on that. But meanwhile, he's been purple in the first 2 subsectors. Here's your GT3 AM pole sitter as it currently stands. He crosses the line. He improves again here, and Tristan Dino Brega on a 48.284. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, stop the clock now. It is the case. He is 4 3 tenths faster than the GT3 Pro pole sitter currently of Diede De Vlaeminck, and he is the best part of half a second faster than his second place peer in the GT3 AM class of Lorenzo Gualtieri. Tristan Di Nobrega is flying here, and I think that is testament to how much proof is going into that practice. As we look now to Diede De Vlaeminck, can he bring it back for the GT3 Pros and get himself onto the overall GT3 pole position? We will wait and see as he makes his way on down, and as he comes charging on down here in towards the final corner. He will have one more lap after this. Rolling on through into the braking zone now, and as he comes on in, will he commit to this lap? He does. He goes a little bit wide of apex, however, but you can lay apex parabolica, but it will lose you some time overall. And as he comes out the final corner, I think it's to set up another lap, although he was green in a couple of subsectors. And as he makes his way across the line, in fact, Diede De Vlaeminck is now going on to another lap here, but we cut away from him to Kurt van Hoornacker, and I saw a message there in the YouTube chat to say an absolutely beautiful livery on what is Kurt's Audi, as Tristan Di Nobrega has commented. Indeed, I must admit, this is one of the most beautiful liveries I've seen on an Audi R8 LMS, and it does remind me of the Team WRT liveries that you see in the Fanatec GT World Challenge. And well, the designer of that livery, absolutely spot on, really capturing the essence of the Audi's body shape with the combination of colours here. I think Van Hoornacker maybe feeling as though that gives him an extra theoretical 10 horsepower by having a fantastic livery. I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the livery, it doesn't give you any extra horsepower, but if you feel good inside the car, that'll make you feel like you've got an extra 10 horsepower. As Van Hoornacker goes on to another lap, he just improved to P5 in the class, but we have now got our final qualifying laps coming on in here with 20 minutes of the session complete. And speaking of somebody bringing a lap to a close here, he's gone personal best in the opening 3 subsectors. That is Jeremy De Boever from the Challenge by DB1. When he gets to the end of subsector 4, will it be a continued trend of green? It is indeed. One more corner to go here, and can the Mercedes driver get himself back into what is P2 or the lead of qualifying for the GT3 Pros? He comes out of the final corner here. He hasn't set any overall bests of everybody, but he is setting personal best left, right and centre. He's lighting up the timing screens. He crossed the line, and that is provisional pole for Jeremy De Boever here. Now, will there be a responsible? Lucas Romano is in the pit, and well, Diede De Vlaeminck, his teammate, is not improving, so that means Jeremy De Boever has taken back what is pole position of the GT3 Pro class, but he has been beaten to the post, I can tell you, in terms of overall GT3 class pole by the AM Tristan Di Nobrega, as we see Diede De Vlaeminck coming in towards the pit very shortly. Yep, he peels on in. Sean Scooter has not improved in the end beyond P5 in the GT3 Pro class. And what else is happening out there on circuit right now? We've got Matthew Hodges and Peter Lemkins. Well, Peter Lemkins in particular has not taken to the circuit, and as we look at Chris Keenan here, one of our last drivers to put in a qualifying lap, will he be able to improve from that current P10 in the GT3 and class as he comes to the line, the Audi R8 driver? No, he peels into the pit. Well, that will be a qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and in the end it is Paul Walton on pole for the purposes of the LMP2 AM class, Tristan Di Nobrega, who is pole overall in the GT3 class, plus also in the AM class of the GT3s, and Jeremy De Boever, who takes pole position in the GT3 Pro class. But I think we've only got a couple of drives out on circuit right now, just cruising to the finish here. They've completed that qualifying session. We see James Slates here making his way on through, but quite the qualifying session in. A few surprises thrown on in there, but to be fair, Monza does throw up surprises given the tactical nature of the slipstream, and will we see a few more in the sprint race? I'd put your money on it, as we now do wait to go racing and get the formation of that grid for race number 1. So as we trick over to race number 1, we now take a look at that grid as all our drivers begin to get lined up. So qualifying on the overall pole position on the front row in P1 and for the LMP2 AM class, it is Paul Walton from RD Simsport. He is joined on the front row by Paul Scott from NXTGEN Racing, with Paul Williams and Team Tetrarouge starting off our second row, joined by the privateer of Jim Stanton. Jonathan Collins, the privateer P5, joined by Richard Stanton in P6. They make up the third row, and then we have the GT3s behind them, Tristan Di Nobrega taking the overall GT3 pole position, and the pole position in the GT3 AM class of Racing Team Astra Blue, ahead of Jeremy De Boever from Challenge by DB1, the GT3 pole position in what is the P8 position there. And then on our fifth row we have Lucas Romano from RP Motorsport Pro Am, joined by Diede De Vlaeminck from Challenge by DB1. On row number 6, it's Lorenzo Gualtieri and Navarro De Boever, the two GT3 AM drivers there, locking out the row. Behind them on row number 7, Kurt van Hoornacker from Challenge by DB2, joined by Dirk Bouts from RP Motorsport Seniors. Then we have James Slate and Sean Scudder, the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver, out qualifying the Racing Team Astra Blue driver on row number 8, with Davide Favo and Mark Seitz, the 2 AMs line up on row number 9. And then on row number 10 is the GT3 Pro driver of Gus Franken, who is joined by the GT3 AM driver, Racing Team Astra Orange's Elwin Sykes there. Behind him on row number 11 is Liam Tack from TGC Racing, joined by Chris Keenan from the MRC team. And then on the final row of the grid, I believe we will just have Peter Lemkins, given that Matthew Hodges, the CXR Project Black driver, I think joined the wrong lobby, and actually it was in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. So 23 drivers will be taken to the grid, and Peter Lemkins starting from the back of the grid there. And we also do have, I should point out, Baz Meacham from Team BRM, who was not able to take part in the qualifying session. We will have 24 cars out on the circuit, not 23, and Baz Meacham, the LMP2 AM driver, will be starting from the back of the field if he's permitted to race, but if not, of course, it'll be a race ban, and we'll see him start from the back of the field for the purposes of what is the feature race. Without further ado, the gridding process is complete, and now we get ready to go racing here, as all drivers are now itching to go, and it will be to Paul Walton to peel off behind the safety car in very short order here, as the blimp unfortunately obscured by what is the tree lines there, and also the banked oval circuit that runs over the top of the Circular Straight. You can see it there. Of course, this circuit, we're running the Grand Prix circuit with the 4 race chicanes, but there is also an oval circuit and a combined circuit which puts both, where's the GP circuit and the oval together, the classic oval. But here today, it is just the 11-corner Grand Prix circuit, as we're here at Monza, and we are now getting ready to go racing. As we do see all of our LMP2 AMs making their way down the back straight, and then we do look to our GT3s, and it's just Diede De Vlaeminck, given that 5-second gap between the GT3 class and the LMP2 AM class. In fact, a bit more of a gap there than just 5 seconds by the looks of things, but he'll manage that gap accordingly. And as he rolls on down, it is the case that we do look back up to what is the LMP2s very shortly as they make their way into the final corner. We see a little bit of side-to-side weaving there from Paul Walton within his box, and he's allowed to do that. All of our drivers are allowed to do that to try and get some sidewall temperature in the tyre. And as they make their way towards the final corner, it'll be to Paul Walton from RD Simsport to take us away for 15 minutes of racing here in race number 1 at Monza in the IMB Raceway Sprint of round 7 of the PROTO GT3 Championship. It's lights out and away we go here for 15 minutes of racing, with Paul Walton getting a good start, but as they all come down towards turn number 1, the Constantino effect will be in play very shortly. We can see Paul Williams there looking for a move on the inside. Into the braking zone they go, and as they come on through, Paul Williams looking up the inside of Paul Scott. They roll on for Paul Walton making the break early, but Williams has to give the space to Paul Scott on his inside, but taking that outside line will give him a longer run out to the corner as they all come roaring on through. Everyone makes it safely through. Meanwhile, down in the GT3 class, it is the case that Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck holds the overall lead ahead of his peers as they all make their way through. Everybody has safely made it through the opening chicane. No incidents so far at Monza, and as they all roll on through there, we can see that Elwin Sykes has dropped quite a few places. He's had a bit of a dismal start there. William Tack right at the back as they all make their way under the gantry board and head down towards turns 4 and 5. Kurt Van Hoenack here battling side by side with what is Sean Scudder, I believe, as they make their way through the chicane and gaining the place. There's a change by DB2 drivers off circuit. I believe we do have Liam Tack. No, in fact, Liam Tack just dropped down the order. We have had somebody go off circuit. I'm not quite sure who. That's Jonathan Collins who's gone off circuit, in fact, as we have it clarified. But as they all come running through the leads, as we see Navarro De Boever here looking for a potential move on James States. He can't find it, and James States has actually got ahead of Navarro De Boever, the Belgian driver here. They were changed by DB2 driver, having a bit of a slow start and being caught napping, in fact, as they make their way down Cerro Clio, and now they all tuck into the long slipstream train as they make their way down towards the Ascari. They come roaring on down. We can see James Slates there going slightly defensive, putting the car in the middle of the road, making sure De Boever does not have the run on the inside, and Slates having to go defensive given the fact that Navarro De Boever will be looking to come on through and feel he's the faster driver in due course as they all come roaring on through the Ascari chicane and head now down towards what is turn number 11. As they make the way on down, we look back to our leaders overall, and that is after one lap, Paul Walton leading by a margin already of 1.6 seconds and gaining versus Paul Williams P2, then Paul Scott in P3, behind him Jim Stanton P4, then Jonathan Collins P5, Richard Stanton P6. Then we go to our GT3s with Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck leading, bringing a gap up of what is there approximately a second to Jeremy De Boever in P1 for the GT3 Pro class, ahead of Lucas Romano, behind him at Diede De Vlaeminck. Then we have Lorenzo Gualtieri, the GT3 AM driver, in second place in the GT3 AM class with an advantage advantage of what is there, approximately 2 seconds over Kurt Van Hoenacker as they all come down to braking. And we can see that James Slate's battling with the GT3 PRO of Sean Scooter, and Scooter getting a little bit deep. There's contact there with Jeremy De Boever. It's sidewall contact between the two cars, and I think it won't hurt them too much, but there may be some aero damage, and that may hurt both of the Ferraris down the straights. They may lose 1 to 2 miles an hour on the straights now, and that could hurt them in the long run here at Monza, given the fact this circuit is so much about top speed down the straights. We'll have to wait and see, but a little bit of a moment there for Sean Scooter. It's a bit late on the brakes. We're at James Slate's up his inside, and it can happen quite easily as they all make their way into turns 4 and 5, rolling on through. But as they do, we see Chris Keenan's had a bit of a moment there coming out of what is the Regia chicane after what was looking quite a strong gain at the start of the race. He drops to the back of the GT3 AM class field as Liam Tack goes up the inside there. A little bit of a sneaky chuck to the inside as they come out of Lesbo 1 in towards Lesbo 2 they roll, and Chris Keenan just trying to find a bit more momentum as he gets himself back up to speed in the Audi R8. And we do know how strong that Audi is through particularly the corners of turns 6 through to 10. It is the case that Audi, the king of direction change, as they make their way down Seraglio and head up towards what is Ascari. And Will Keenan look for the move versus Liam Tack, and he looks for it, but he's not close enough to go for it. But as we look from them to a bit further up the road, I can tell you that right now it is the case that Diede De Vlaeminck chasing after Lucas Romano here for P2 in what is the GT3 Pro class. And of course, change by DB1 would love to make it a 1-2 in this race as they come run off, and they've got plenty of time to try and do so. As they come on around to complete their second tour of the circuit under race conditions, it is the case that Diede De Vlaeminck hands a battle with the brutal boost of what is the turbo of that BMW M4 in front, and Lucas Romano at the helm of the RP Motorsport Pro and BMW M4. And we do know, of course, Lucas Romano, one of the two major contenders in the battle for the championship of the GT3 Pro class currently, as they all make their way under braking. But as they do, we look back here to Chris Keenan battling side by side with Liam Tack. Keenan getting ahead. Liam Tack looks at the return under braking, but he's got a bit deep under braking. But be fair, he's got the car stopped, and a nice move up the inside there, and Liam Tack has got the place back, and that'll be a drag race for the pair of them all the way up to what will be Regia. And well, we do know that Ferrari is stronger on the acceleration compared to the Audi, but the Audi's got the top end speed once it gets to 5th gear. And as they make their way on through, Liam Tack I think has got it done for the time being as they all head up towards the braking zone. But everybody forming into the slipstream train minus these two battling for P9. But to be fair, I think they're loving it in their respective cockpits right now, and it's all critical points in their championship campaigns, and particularly for their teams as they make their way down towards Lesmo 1 once again. But we look from them to what is Jim Stanton here. Jim Stanton battling with what is Paul Scott, trying to go around the outside into Parabolica curve here, and it looks like Paul Scott had a pretty bad run out of Ascari, and Jim Stanton tucks back in. We ride on board here with a privateer chasing after the next-gen racing driver, and you'll see in the draft here just how rapidly these LMP 2 Dallara P217 machines gain speed on the slipstream as he peels out there to the outside. It's going to be the case that Paul Scott will defend the inside versus Stanton on the outside, and Stanton ahead already before the braking zone. And I think Paul Scott being quite polite there. He could have fought it a bit harder, but recognising we're only 5 minutes into a 15-minute race, and they want to be battling with Paul Williams, who's in P2 in the foreground of the camera shot as the Team Tetra Rouge driver there flies through Curva Grande, and they pursue only 8 attempts down. But as they follow on through here, we do look back to what is James Slates versus Jeremy De Boever. And well, James Slates right now P3 in the class as they make their way out of Parabolic, and you can see Jeremy De Boever staying right there with him, keeping that pressure on lap after lap. And as they make their way down towards what is turn number 1, we had there's been a slight off track for Tristan Dino Brega, but it's the case he's holding on to lead right now. James Slates has to go defensive here and the inside. Meanwhile, Jeremy De Boever on the outside. They make their way on the brake from the Ferrari driver trying to outbrake the Audi. It goes to the cut back here. James Slates goes very deep. Jeremy De Boever is going to be given the room on the outside, but now it becomes a drag race all the way towards Regia there, and it's the case that James Slates was able to get the car back under control, and he made Jeremy De Boever had to really work that outside line, and perhaps the RP Motorsport Pro and driver will just about hold on here. He'll have to go defensive, he wants to hold it. Jeremy De Boever's right there with him, and there's contact between the two of them, and they're both into the wall there. My goodness, and goodness me, that's Kurt Van Hoenacker also taken with a hit from James Slates' wayward machine, and Davide Favo takes evasive action. Well, that's going to open things up massively here in what is the GT3 AM class in terms of that final spot on the podium. Well, unfortunately, we can't take a look back at the replay of what exactly happened there, but it looked as though the two drivers were still nose to tail. Now for P4, P5, it is the case as we see, I think both of them with damaged cars and both into the wall. I think both of those machines are going to be going to the pits in short order, or they're going to be all the way down the field. A bit of contact there, I think, as they came out of Lesmo 2, but it did look as though they're both of them wanted to contest the space, and I think in the end, in James Slates trying to do a little bit of a squeeze to Jeremy De Boever. I think Jeremy De Boever may have thought he had more space on circuit than there was allotted to him, and the two have come together. Of course, the stewards will be the ones to apportion who was at fault for that. We can't give verdict on there precisely, but I would say definitely the two of them coming together, and that's going to be one that will be needing to be looked at under a microscope by the stewards post-race. As meanwhile, we do look back here to our LMP2 drivers, and we can see that Paul Scott has fallen behind Jim Stanton as they make their way out of Lesmo 1 and up towards Lesmo 2. And as they roll them through, where's the right hand there of Lesmo 2? It does look as though Paul Scott here trying to come back in short order. But meanwhile, with all this happening, we've got a battle for the GT3 Pro lead here. And there's a bit of contact from Lucas Romano on Jeremy De Boever. And I don't think Jeremy De Boever is going to be too happy with that, given the fact he will feel as though he had the right to be down what was the outside to inside run through the chicane. And a little bit of a tap there from Lucas Romano getting his elbows out. But again, a little bit of door knocking does happen in these cars, but different drivers will have different expectations, and of course in different scenarios. I think Jeremy De Boever will feel as though he'd done enough there to earn his right to be on that inside line into turn number 2, but Lucas Romano seems to think a little bit differently, and now he'll go pursuing once again. But to be fair, we do know that De Boever does not let these things get to him that easily. Instead, he gets his head back down very quickly and goes on the offensive, and that brief tap will only inspire him as we go into the second half of this sprint to chase down Lucas Romano even more. As they roll the way back onto Cerro Calero here, you can see the gap between the two of them is 1 second, but it's not expanding too much as they make the way on down. As they come rip on down where's the Cerro Calero straight, we are hearing that a little bit further up the road that we do have Paul Scott, who's had something go very wrong at what is there the opening chicane, the Velo chicane. He's dropped down to P5, and meanwhile Jeremy De Boever into the wall at Ascari. We can't wait for a brief run. He's into the wall there. I'm not exactly sure what's happened, but it's gone wrong for the change by DB1 driver, and Diede De Vlaeminck is now up into P2 in class, and Dirt Bounce is up into P3 here. And I think the RP Motorsport Senior Trial will be thinking, well, they're going to drop like flies like this, I'm just going to keep taking the places as they make the way all the way round and through what is turn number 11. As we say hello to Lucas Romano there in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Lucas, and hope you're doing well. As meanwhile, we do look to one of the sister outfit drivers from RP Motorsport, Dirt Bounce here in that P3 position, and really having a quiet race, but at the same time a smart race, and sometimes that's what it's all about as he makes his way down the start finish straight here and heads down towards turn number 1 once again. But now the racing does calm down a little bit by the looks of things, as we do see there in the rear, in the rear of the picture, it did look as though Sean Scooter just under a bit of pressure from Davide Favo, his fellow GT3 driver, and of course fellow RP Motorsport driver, albeit Sean Scooter from Racing Team Astra Blue, Davide Favo, the GT3 AM from Racing Team Astra Orange. If that's enough to get your head around, it's the fact these two drivers in 2 different GT3 classes as well. Scooter in the Pro class, meanwhile Davide Favo in what is the AM class. And as they make their way down towards turn number 4, it is the case that right now looking to just run in the toe of one another and simply build out the pace and chase down the drivers up the road from them. But as they make their way all the way down towards the second Lesmo, it does look as though Sean Scooter's actually got some damage on the front right side of that car from the perspective of the driver. Front left from our camera perspective, looking at the car head on. And I wonder if he's had a bit of a knock to that front right tyre and also the front right body panel over the top of the tyre earlier on in this race. It does not look as though that body panel is correctly mounted over the tyre. In fact, it's exposing the tyre by quite a degree, but we'll have to wait and see whether it has any effect later on as he makes his way in towards Ascari once again. But things have calmed down a little bit now, as we say earlier. And speaking of things being relatively calm, we're in all the storm and the battle for the GT3 and P3 position. Mark Sykes has moved all the way out to P4. He started P7 in the class. He's now up to P4, and he is continuing to rise here as he makes his way on through. In fact, correction, he started P4 in the class. He stayed P4, but he's gained 3 places overall. And as he makes his way on down in towards what is a parabolic curve here, looking very good as the next gen racing with Sam Case's UK driver in the 666 machine. It may be the sign of the devil, and indeed the devil is in the detail when you're driving that Audi R8, because it can be a handful if you don't know what you're doing. But Mark Sykes definitely knows what he's doing in that machine. And we have that clarification there from Jeremy De Boever with regards to that hit with the wall at Ascari. It's a problem with the wheel in terms of the tyres, I believe, or alternatively the steering rack after the contact with Lucas Romano, and that is the reason of the crash into the wall there, which is very unfortunate indeed. Some of these cars, depending on where the impact occurs, they can be very sensitive to knocks and bangs, and well, it is one of those situations where even the smallest of knocks can upset the car. But Lucas Romano right now, not looking as though he's got any damage to the car, any damage that's hurting him too much, to be fair, as he makes his way through Lesmo 1 once again here. And as he does, he's only got 3 minutes plus the final lap to go. And I think he'll feel as though right now everything is on course for a victory. He runs a little bit wide. They're coming out of Lesmo 2, but he's been able to keep it together and just kicks up a little bit of dust and dirt. As he makes his way down, we do look from him to P2 in the LMP2 AM class, and we can see here Paul Williams and Team Tetrarch looking very smooth indeed as he rolls his way here from Lesmo 1 up towards Lesmo 2. He's got the traffic of Chris Keenan in front of him, and as he makes his way into the braking zone here, we do know that Paul Williams is an absolute gentleman when it comes to lapping or going past the GT3 class traffic. We saw the Hockenheimring where he decided to err on the side of caution, but speaking of one driver who's not going to err on the side of caution, going into Ascari here, Mark Sykes. We're hearing that Diede De Vlaeminck had an off track in the run out of Lesmo 2, which cost him all the speed down Serraglio, and right now Mark Sykes up into a podium position as we Ryan and Warden look back here from the Audi R8 drive from Next Gen Racing to Sam Cases UK. Now can he hold off Diede De Vlaeminck as we see Paul Williams there making short work of coming on through, and I think Farber being caught napping there with regards to Paul Williams coming through at the last moment. As you can see there, Mark Sykes has gone a bit deep into the corner, and we'll very shortly see the reappearance of that Lamborghini, but the Lamborghini very strong on the straights here compared to the Audi, and behind them we can see that is Elwin Sykes, not the same family as Mark Sykes, but they share the same surname, as right now it is the racing team Astra Orange team who are on the attack versus the Next Gen Racing Audi as they all make the way down towards what is turns 1 and 2. Under braking they go. It's going to be Mark Sykes on the outside, Diede De Vlaeminck on the inside. Mark Sykes gives him the space, but it looks like Mark Sykes is able to take the natural line there, and instead Diede De Vlaeminck now finds himself under a bit of pressure from where it's Jonathan Collins behind as they make the way on through, and Elwin Sykes has to back off completely as he lets the LMP2 AM class drivers come on through there. And I think that's a smart move by the McLaren driver. He may lose some time to the battle for P3, but he gains some safety and guarantees that P5 is a definite as he makes his way down in towards what is there the Regia chicane. But as they roll through it once again, it is a situation whereby Diede De Vlaeminck will be looking to try and come on back with a limited time remaining. This is the closest battle we have on circuit currently. It is in the GT3 AM class, the P3 in the GT3 AM class, and it is between Diede De Vlaeminck, who is the focus of our cameraman's attention, and then Mark Sykes just in front of him there, with Vlaeminck going on the offensive and almost losing the rear there, coming out of Lesmo 2, just taking a bit too much run through the apex there of Lesmo 2, and the car getting unsettled as a result, just tapping the apex curve a little too high, which is very easy to do, and that unsettled the rear of the Lamborghini, one of the most stable mid-engine rear-wheel drive class within the cars. And as they make their way through Ascari, it does look as though we're going to have at least one more lap, because Paul Walton's making his way around right now, and I can tell you he's just about across the timeline to go on to what is his 10th and final lap of this race as our drivers continue to press on. But speaking of pressing on, we do have Paul Scott, who after dropping down the order is now back into P4 in the LMP2 AM class and chasing after Jonathan Collins. Collins flashing his lights furiously there at what is Jeremy De Boever to say to him, look, I'm coming on through. And as they make their way down, start finish straight here into the braking zone they go. It's going to be Scott on the inside versus Collins on the outside, and Collins out braking Scott by a margin. And as they roll on through here, I think Paul Scott will be trying to come on back a little bit later on in the lap up towards Regia. As they make the one up here, they will have to navigate their way past the GT3 traffic. That's Dirt Mouse, and they've also got Lorenzo Gualtieri, and that's not going to stop Paul Scott from peeling out to the inside as they make their way into the braking zone, but he hasn't got the run, and now he's going to have to wait patiently for the run down Serraglio or the run out of Ascari. We'll have to wait to see as the 15-minute marker has passed. The checker flag will be out the next time our overall leader comes on around. He's down the Serraglio straight right now, but we stay with this battle for the time being. As we see there, it's the case that Collins is compromised on the exit. Paul Scott looks to move up the inside into Lesmo 2, and you can see Jonathan Collins just about gave him the space, but that was a very sudden move from Paul Scott, trying to seize on the opportunity, but Collins has held on for the time being as they head down Serraglio. But we must cut away from them to our leader, because right now in the LMP2 AM class, he makes his way down towards Parabolic. He's got an 11-second gap to Paul Williams, and he's led this one from start to finish. And as he comes out to the final corner here, it's going to be business as usual for Paul Walton, as he'll take another win in the series, our winner in the LMP2 AM class here in the sprint at Monza. Paul Walton, he finishes 11 seconds clear in the end of Paul Williams, who comes to the line in a deserved P2 there for the Team Tetrarch drive, the best of the rest. And then it will be the case that Jonathan Collins will come home P3, and behind him Lucas Romano is your GT3 Pro Class winner by a margin of 2 seconds over Diede De Vlaeminck, and Dirt Bounce just behind will take the final slot on the podium. And then right at the rear of the picture there, you can see Tristan Di Vlaeminck for Racing Team Astra Blue takes the win in the GT3 AM class ahead of what is Lorenzo Gualtieri in P2, and then in P3 it will be Mark Sykes who just held off Diede De Vlaeminck to the finish. My goodness, what a brilliant opening race. There was drama, there were close battles, and well, it all played out in the end over not just the slipstream, but also who dared to win under braking into the corners. But Mark Sykes in the end able to hold off a fast charging Diede De Vlaeminck, and you can imagine the Racing Team Astra Orange Trial will be looking to come back very strongly in was the feature and try to secure a podium here at Monza, but we will have to wait and see. We still have some drivers coming on through to finish their races. Gus Rankin here coming on through to come home P6 in what is the GT3 Pro class ahead of Jeremy De Boever there, who in that major instant with James Slates in the end was only able to finish P9 in the GT3 class, but that will set him up very well for what is being right towards the front of the GT3 class in the reverse grid for the feature, and his target will be to take the win. There's no doubt about that. But as all the drivers come to the finish, I definitely think that right now Lucas Romano will be thinking to himself, right, that's one win in the bag. Now we've got to make it 2 out of 2 to really extend that championship lead. And well, you can imagine that Jeremy De Boever will not want to let him run away with it this time as they make the way on around and come down towards the pits on this cool down lap. But a fantastic race, all said and done there. And let's take you through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. So in the end, after 15 minutes of racing, we can see that in the sprint race at Monza for round 7 of the Proto GT3 Championship in the IMB Racewear Lobby, that is Lobby 2 of this series, Paul Walton was the overall winner and our winner in the LMP2 AM class by a margin of 11 seconds over Paul Williams there for Team Tetra Rouge. Jonathan Collins spoiling the Paul train there of the aim of getting 3 Pauls on the podium in the LMP2 AM class. They are trying it this week. It is the case that Jonathan Collins there in a brilliant battle to P3 ahead of Paul Scott in P4, and then Richard Stanton ahead of brother Jim Stanton there, completing the standings for the LMP2 AM class. In P7 overall, our winner in the GT3 Pro class, Lucas Romano there for RP Motorsport Pro-Am, ahead of Diede De Vlaeminck, a brilliant drive there from the Challenge Square DB1 driver and Dirtbouts completing the GT3 Pro podium. And then Tristan Di Vlaeminck came home P10 in the end. That is our winner in the GT3 AM class of Racing Team Astra Blue in a dominant run of form ahead of Jeremy De Boever, and then Lorenzo Gualtieri P12, that's second place in the GT3 AM class for Racing Team Astra Orange, ahead of Sean Scudder, and then Mark Sykes completing the GT3 AM podium P14 overall. Diede De Vlaeminck, P15, he'll be thinking that he can get the podium next time out in the GT3 class ahead of Elwyn Sykes, Chris Keenan and Liam Tack completing the top 18, and then behind them, not to be forgotten about, James Slate and Gus Rankin completing the top 20 ahead of Jeremy De Boever, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Peter Lempkins, with of course the fact that Baz Meacham unable to participate in this opening race due to a race suspension because of penalty points picked up over the preceding 6 rounds. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is race number 1 complete here at Monza. We'll be taking a short break, but we're back in approximately 10 minutes' time for the build-up to the feature race. Indeed, 60 minutes, 4 times the duration of the race compared to the sprint, and that all-important mandatory pit stop. Start thinking about who could be the winner. It's sure to be one about the slipstream and also about timing that pit stop to perfection. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the build-up to race number 2 of round 7 of the PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you here at Monza, the Italian Cathedral of Speed. And our focus, of course, on the IMB Racewear lobby. That is lobby 2 of this series. IMB Racewear being the company that delivers racewear for both sim and real-life racers, with all of their clothing being designed for you by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products, and enables you as the racer to make the impact you've always wanted. If you want to know more, be sure to head to imbracewear.com today. But as all of our drivers here look to make the impact they want at Monza tonight, it is the case right now as all drivers continue to make their way on around the circuit. It was a good race for a good number of drivers, particularly those trying to build up some all-important points, such as Paul Williams here, and really on a run of form right now with that second place in the sprint. And can he make it another podium in the feature? He'd love to make it a double podium, and indeed one driver who'd love to be on that podium in the LMP AM class when it was said and done tonight will be Paul Scott, who just missed out in the end with Jonathan Collins holding on to take a deserved podium. But the one driver who's been absolutely flying, and well, that is Paul Walton, who right now is in the pit lane, not going out onto the circuit. And indeed, we can see him there in the YouTube chat saying that Walton guy is rapid. Definitely, he is very rapid. We say hello to Paul Walton Jr. in the YouTube chat, and we do see his father, Paul Walton Sr., cheering him on in the Facebook chat. But as we do wait for this final practice session to conclude, or this final warm-up session, it may say there's 8 minutes remaining there at the top of the screen, ladies and gentlemen, but I do believe, in fact, we've only got about 1 or 2 minutes remaining, so we will get a very sudden jump to setting of the grid for the feature race. It is the case we did see a number of incidents in the sprint race, such as Jeremy De Boever here, the Belgian driver, in contact with James Slates, both drivers into the wall down while the straights coming out of what was Curva Grande in the run down towards the Regia chicane. So that was the run into turns 4 and 5. But Jeremy De Boever, of course, having finished the race on what was the lead lap, he will have the opportunity to be started up towards the front based on that reverse grid, and it will be damage limitation in terms of that starting position. He'll be expected to take the win, given the fact that his main rival in the championship, the GT3 AM championship lead, Tristan Niedebrega, who we see here, his fellow Ferrari driver, well, the South African picked up the win in race number 1 and has been the fastest of our GT3 drivers for the most part of today, particularly in qualifying. And now Niedebrega, we think to himself, I've got to try and make it 2 out of 2, or at least get a podium to add to that win and continue to expand that championship lead. And as he makes his way on down there, we do see Nick Glenn there, who would say hello to in the Facebook chat, who was saying nice podium for Mark Sykes, the GT3 AM driver earlier on today, who put in that absolutely brilliant AM performance in what was the sprint race to come home P3. And we also say hello there to Mark Sykes in the Facebook chat. And for those wondering how many rounds have we got left, well, today is round number 7. This week is round number 7. We will have 5 more rounds after this, round 8 in a week's time, and then a week's break before the final 4 rounds. And well, we are now getting the grid all set here for the build up to the feature race. And we can't take you through the grid order from top to bottom, unfortunately, due to technical limitations. But what we can tell you is we can give you an approximation of what that grid will be in short order. But in the meantime, we are waiting right now for the grid to be set. And as it is being set, we do see there, starting on what will be the front row of the grid, we do have the 2 members of the Stanton family. And I do believe, actually, we will also have Baz Meacham taken to the circuit, because he only had the race suspension for what was the, what was the sprint race, but he'll be starting all the way from the back of the field, and therefore he'll have to fight his way up through the LMP2 AM class. But it will be the Stanton brothers who are on the front row, and then behind them it will be, unless I'm very much mistaken, Paul Scott, followed by then Jonathan Collins, and then it will be behind them, it'll be Paul Williams and also Paul Walton. But as the grid has been set, we wait for our drivers to pull away, and there are the updated timing screens right now. It's Richard Stanton who starts on pole, and the privateer there will be getting us underway at the green. Meanwhile, in what is the GT3 AM class, we have Jeremy De Boever, who starts right at the front of the GT3s, and the GT3 AM driver on pole there. He's joined up by what is Gus Franken on the same row, and then it will appear Liam Tack and Elwin Sykes behind them as they gradually tiptoe their way down towards the Scarra here, given that 5 seconds distance to what is the LMP2 AM drivers. We then have behind Gus Franken and Liam Tack and James Slate, it will be Elwin Sykes, then Chris Keenan, followed by Davide Farlow, and then we'll have Mark Sykes and Sean Scooter there, and behind them it will be Lorenzo Gualtieri and Jeremy De Boever, and then and Tristan De Vlaeminck, followed by Diede De Vlaeminck. And then on our final 2 rows, it'll be Dirk Bounce and Peter Lemkins. Peter Lemkins actually, I believe, did have a race suspension for what was the sprint race. And behind them, Lucas Romano and Kurt Van Hohenlacker starting right from the back of the field there. But as we do our way to go racing, we look back up towards the front of the field, and it is our LMP2 AM drivers, the 2 Stanton brothers, who take us away for 60 minutes of racing action here in race number 2 at Monza in the IMB Raceware lobby. And it's lights out, away we go here for 60 more minutes of race as Jim Stanton gets a very slow start, and it causes a huge concertina effect. So they come down in towards turn number 1 already. We can see 3 wide there in the rear of the picture. That's Paul Walton, Paul Scott, and also Jim Stanton. Jim Stanton being mugged left, right, and centre. Jonathan Collins is going to make it a 4-way pass, and there's contact with Paul Scott there. And in the end, well, Jim Stanton gets a little bit unsettled. Paul Scott with the contact unsettled even more. But as they all make their way now through Curva Grande, it looks like Paul Williams coming through, but Paul Walton there already going from what was effectively P6 to P2 in the space of just 2 corners, and that man is absolutely flying as Paul Scott meanwhile has lost that in dramatic form. But meanwhile further back we can see Navarro. Navarro's had a clean run through the chicane, but it doesn't sound as though it's all been clean for everyone behind us. We see James Slates making the pass there on Elwin Sykes into turns 4 and 5, and Elwin Sykes going very deep under braking on cold tyres. Further back we see Tristan De Vlaeminck there has made his way on through in what is the P6 position in the GT3 AM class, and we've got Dirk Bounce trying to go up the inside here. Oh boy, oh goodness me, and Elwin Sykes just straight lining off the road. I think there's damage to that McLaren that we haven't seen down into the first 2 corners under braking, because that McLaren is into the wall and it looks as though it just cannot turn right. Alternatively, the brakes are locking up each time he tries to brake hard into a corner. But meanwhile, with all that, well, what else has happened? We're hearing that we've lost Jeremy De Boever. He's down in the pit lane, as is Sean Scooter and also Mark Sykes. All 3 of them have been involved in some contact. But right now, we focus on the here and now. And as they all make the way down towards Ascari, we can see it is the case that Lucas Romano has gained a lot of ground already early in this race. In fact, he's up to P2 in the GT3 Pro class after the open lap. It's not even done the open lap. He's gone all the way from the back to almost the front. And, well, I do think that something dramatics happened. I think we can see a bit of a story there in the rear of the picture, because Gus Franken right now with an absolutely crumpled front end on that Mercedes AMG. That Mercedes is not looking healthy. I can imagine it'll be coming into the pits in short order. But meanwhile, we must look from them to our LMP2 AM class drivers, because we can see Paul Walton already making that early breakaway after 1 lap. Meanwhile, Jim Stanton starting to break away from Paul Williams here. Paul Williams has actually come up to P3, but Paul Scott behind him in P4, and it's Jonathan Collins being chased by Richard Stanton, and then Baz Meacham in P7. Lost to the LMP2 AM drivers right now, but meanwhile we can see Richard Stanton pulling out to the inside here, under braking into Regia up the inside. He's going to be defended off the cut back there from where's Jonathan Collins, but Collins comes back very strong on the exit, but Stanton just about covers him off there. That was very nip and tuck between the 2 of them, but in the end he's been able to cover him. Richard Stanton takes that P5 place in dramatic fashion, and now you can see Baz Meacham trying to get into the mix here with a little duck and weave from left to right, but in the end he can't quite find his way along as they all make the way down the Cerro Glio straight once again and head all the way down towards Ascari. But as they come rolling them down, we do look to Diede De Vlaeminck meanwhile as he tries to go on the offensive here versus Lucas Romano, but no way through as they make the way in towards the 2 Lesmos. But as they do, we do look here to Jonathan Collins. In fact, has just been passed, my apologies, by, well, in fact, no, yeah, he's just been passed by Richard Stanton. We saw that on camera. Not sure why I'm repeating myself there, but it is the case that we can see Jonathan Collins trying to come on back here and Baz Meacham holding firm. Meanwhile, we're hearing that Lucas Romano's had, oh, goodness me, Lucas Romano with a major off into the wall there, coming out the 2 Lesmos. We saw earlier on in the sprint, he was just drifting a little bit wide each and every time as they went deeper and deeper into the race. Well, that corner has finally caught up with the Belgian, and that is not what he would have wanted. Fortunately for him, of course, his main rival, Jeremy De Boever, is in the pit lane. Hand repair work done to the car still. They're having to do a lot of work to that car despite the fast repair. But meanwhile, we look to James Slates here, battling with Tristan De Vlaeminck up the inside, in towards Parabolic, and as they come out to the corner, can he hold off the fast charge in Tristan De Vlaeminck here as they make the way down, start finish straight and on to another lap. as they make the way onto lap number 3. We can see it side by side, the long run. It's Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck on the inside, meanwhile Slates on the outside. They're only halfway down the straight. Diede De Vlaeminck seems to have the run as they make the way onto the camera gantry, and now down into turn number 1 they go, into the braking zone, and in the end it does. It looks like Slate's getting it done. Meanwhile Van Hoenacker looking for the move there versus Dirt Bounce. The leader in the GT3 Pro class is Bounce, and meanwhile the GT3 AM driver is trying to gain track position to hunt after P5, P4 in class as they make the way on down and through. Jeremy De Boever has just left the pit lane. I can tell he's back in racing as they make the way on through Curva Grande here. It does look as though Van Hoenacker trying to go on the offensive. He can't quite find it at the moment. However, in terms of getting the place, and Mark Sykes has just left the pits as well after being towed off circuit and having the repair work done to the car. As they make the way through and up towards the Lesmos, we do look back up to Baz Meacham here, who is continuing to try and chase after the team BRM, chasing after Jonathan Collins and also Richard Stanton. He just cannot seem to find a way to factor into this three-way fight. And in terms of the strategy, we do know in these LMP2 machines that they have to conserve a lot of fuel if they plan to do a one-stop here. So the fact we're not seeing too much progress in the Welshman may be a sign that he's trying to do a one-stop versus a two-stop that drives in front of him. We'll have to wait and see. That's a big consideration. But meanwhile, speaking of big considerations, it's Paul Williams versus Jim Stanton. A little bit of door-to-door contact there as they come down into 1. And as they make their way through, Paul Williams backing out there on the braking quite sensibly. It was such a tight line. And, well, Jim Stanton holds on for the time being. But as we look to ride on board the gearbox here of Jim Stanton, going to be a little bit of a connectivity issue there. But that does settle down in the end. And as they make their way through Curva Grande, you can see how Paul Williams has lost that initially. But being in the tow, he won't be too far away by the end of this lap. If it's the case that he's able to if he's not able to close up before the end of the lap, and as they roll them through what is the reduced chicane there, you can see Paul Williams is going a bit deep and actually overcooking it under braking as they make the way in towards the Lesmos. But as they come through there, we do look to Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck, who's broken away from James Slates, and now up into P3 as he passes Chris Keenan for the first of the podium positions here. 6 minutes into this race, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver is absolutely flying right now as the South African as he picks up another position. We see both there, Chris Keenan and James Slates both getting a little bit of snap oversteer on power on the exit of the Retfield chicane. I think both of them there just on slightly cold tyres still and not enjoying that tyre situation at the moment as they try to bring things back under control in the run up towards Regia. But as they do have the pressure of Dirt Bounce behind them. Unfortunately for them, Dirt Bounce being a pro driver, he won't be taking points off them when he overtakes them just track position as they make the way down towards Lesmo 1. But as they come on in here, we do have most of our drivers down in the GT3 class starting to run nose to tail as they make the way on through. And this is a sign of how things begin to play out as we go deeper and deeper into the race at Monza. We start to enter the slipstream train, and it's such an important factor here in the feature, given the fact that our drivers will try and use the fuel safe if they feel as they haven't got an outright pace advantage versus the driver in front. But Chris Keenan here under pressure from James Slates. It's Keenan on the inside, James Slates on the outside into Ascari, and Keenan backing off completely there to let Slates and also Dirt Bounce go. I think Chris Keenan there being smart, the Belgian, recognising he's not in a fight with James Slates, albeit he could try and hold James Slates behind. He'll only cost himself time in his race, and he'd rather try and hold on to P5 and chase after the drivers in front to use them as a slipstream tow magnet rather than trying to battle them. As we see in the rear of the picture there, Liam Tack getting it all sorts of wrong, but we come back to Van Hoenacker, who looks to move up the inside into Parabolica, gets his nose slightly in there and keeps Chris Keenan wide. And as they make the way out of the corner, the challenge by DB2 driver gains another position here as he roars down the start-finish straight. Chris Keenan's going to stay on the outside there and battle with it. They're side by side at the moment, and as they make the way all the way up towards the turn 1 braking zone here, well, I think the story is said and done with regards to Kurt Van Hoenacker getting ahead because he had the straight line speed advantage, and into the braking zone they go, and Chris Keenan there tucks back in behind and waits to go on the offensive later on in the race as they make the way out of turns 1 and 2. Meanwhile, a bit further back, I can tell you that Liam Tack, with that moment coming out of turn 10, well, that Ferrari has been in the wars. There's quite a bit of damage to the front end, particularly on the centre front bumper, and right now the Briton with that damage, well, he will be feeling the pinch, there's no doubt about that. As meanwhile, Jim Stanton has gone off at Parabolica Curve with a spin. Well, I believe we've also had a slight off track for it's Paul Williams, and that means that Paul Scott is now up into P2. Now, whether there was contact between the two drivers or not, we're not 100% sure. We're not hearing anything about contact in our ear, but it is the case that Paul Scott has gained, and as a result, well, you can see now Paul Williams under pressure from, oh, goodness me, going very deep on the brakes. There's Sean Scooter, who just literally drifts across the circuit, and well, whereas he's into the wall there, well, he's into the escape road, he's almost gone completely out of the circuit limits with regards to where we can leave the circuit with our marshals had to pull the car off the road, and we can see that Sean Scooter there getting it all wrong under braking. I think it was the swarm of LMP2s, and he's just had nowhere to go other than off in the end. He's purely had the accident to himself. He hasn't taken anybody with him, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, I think, will be a bit infuriated with how he was swamped by the LMP2s into that braking zone. But meanwhile, with that, we can see Diede De Vlaeminck there running quite slowly in the run in towards Parabolica. But to be fair, it may have been the case that he yielded to Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck on the inside line there, respecting the fact that he's not going to have the pace to match the sister team driver from Racing Team Astra of what is Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck. And as they make the way down towards turn number 1 onto another lap, this might be a smart swap here, given that Diede De Vlaeminck is very comfortably running in P3 right now. He's got James Slates 3.3 seconds back. And speaking of James Slates, well, here is James Slates battling with Kurt Van Hoornacker for P4 in the GT3 AM class. Van Hoornacker's on the inside under braking, but he's not quite able to make James Slates make a mistake as they roll out the corner. But we ride on board with Kurt Van Hoornacker as they make the way now up through Curva Grande and head all the way up towards what is turns 4 and 5, also known as the Regia chicane. Now you can see that Kurt Van Hoornacker, with what was a very tight line into the Retvilio chicane, he's lost a lot of pace and he's opened up quite a bit of a gap to James Slates, because he'll have another opportunity a little bit later on. And we're having some confirmation there in the YouTube chat that there was contact made between what was Stanton and Williams when we saw that was, and excuse me if I'm wrong here, that was Jim Stanton who was off circuit at Parabolica, and we heard that Paul Williams had a bit of an off there, so there may be a little bit of a question to the stewards about that one. But we can hear that Jim Stanton is in the pit lane right now, having repair work done to the car, and meanwhile Kurt Van Hoornacker here chasing after James Slates and trying to hunt down that P4 position in the GT3 AM class. As they make their way into the braking zone here for Ascari. Of course, for Kurt Van Hoornacker, if he can nail this, as we saw, oh my goodness, and well, it looks as though there, well, James Slate's getting it wrong, having to snap the brakes on and put the car in the middle of the road. He's gone off. There was a bit of contact with Kurt Van Hoornacker, but I can understand from Kurt Van Hoornacker's perspective as riding on board with him, he would have had nowhere to go other than to tap the back of James Slate, and he's had to carry on his way, so he can't park the car there and let him back, given the fact that he's been right on the racing line. But that was a very haphazard moment for the pair of them, and James Slates has lost out and dropped down to a P7, and how much damage is on the rear of that Audi, how much damage is on the front of Van Hoornacker's Audi as well. That'll be a question that only they can decipher, and whether they need to come into the pits before their scheduled stop. We're only 11 minutes into this race. We've still got a long way to go and still plenty to find out with regards to how this plays out as the drivers make the way onto another lap, and James Slates here will be feeling the pain of that moment. Just got it out of sorts coming out to turn number 8 and going so slowly into turn 9 at Ascari. I just saw Kurt Van Hoornacker caught by surprise, and in the end the contact between the two of them, I think, was a case of just how light I should say, that Van Hoornacker could make the contact rather than trying to avoid it. Otherwise he would have had to have thrown the car across the sausage curbs at Ascari, and that Audi could have been wayward and taken other cars with it. But meanwhile we can see here Peter Lemkins as the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver in P3 at the moment. The Ferrari driver here really thriving now. He's out of the circuit and going hunting after Diede De Vlaeminck is the Belgian in the number 122 car, as he tries to hunt down that second place in class to try and make it a 1-2 RP Motorsport lockout. Although do keep in mind, of course, Dirk Bounce the RP Motorsport Seniors driver, whereas Peter Lemkins the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver, as they make the way down Seraglio. Now as they do, you can see Paul Walton there pulling out of the racing line to go past the GT3 driver, just navigating his way through the GT3 traffic and doing so quite sensibly here as Peter Lemkins gives him the space to do so as well. And as they make their way into the braking for Ascari, no change here. What I can tell you is changing on the cards. We see Richard Stanton here continue to chase after what is Jonathan Collins, and of course these two were battling earlier on in the sprint race. Now they're battling again, with Collins ahead of Stanton right now, but the privateer will try and come back against his fellow privateer in short order if he can, as they make their way through Ascari and past Gus Franken there, the GT3 Pro driver in the Mercedes. Now as they roll through and head down the back straight all the way down towards Parabolica curve, that gap 9/10 of a second. We do see a little bit further on the road. Paul Williams only 2 seconds clear of the pair as they make their way into the braking zone here for Parabolica curve turn at number 11. And as they roll them through, we now started to enter that point in the race where the strategy really now starts to play out. We start to get those thoughts on who could be doing what in terms of strategy. In terms of what we're expecting, as we mentioned earlier, we're expecting our LMP2 drivers to either be on 1 stops or 2 stops. The ideal strategy is the 1 stop if you can do the fuel saving for it, but the 2 stop requires an aggressive approach. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, we're expecting all of our drivers to go for a 1 stop unless they pick up any damage, although fuel could be quite critical. And the drivers that we see pit around the 18 to 22 minute mark to try and go for the undercut those are the ones who will be critical in fuel right at the end of the race and will have to do some extra fuel saving to make it to the end. Whereas those who go deeper, they won't be critical on fuel, but of course they lose out on that opportunity to do a potential early undercut, and that may hurt them if they are not able to get back on the pace as soon as they come out of the pit and put in qualifying laps effectively all the way up to when they come into the pit. That's the thing when you pit at the halfway point or after the halfway point of the race here at Monza, you have to be delivering qualifying laps in a GT3 through and through to make up for the fact the undercut does seem to gain a couple of seconds over the course of a 10-minute window or even a 5-minute window, as we do look here to Peter Lemkins, who continues to chase after Diede De Vlaeminck here as they roll on through Ascari once again. Now, as they come rolling through this time, we do look to Vlaeminck and we look back from the gearbox of the Mercedes. Definitively, we could argue one of the best engine notes of any of the GT3 class machines in the world, the Mercedes AMG V8 of course, and as it rolls on through in towards Parabolica curve here, you can just see Peter Lemkins. He does have Paul Williams there coming around the outside of him, and Lemkins had a bit of a compromise line, and now Paul Williams will be coming on through as well. Diede De Vlaeminck here, really timed this to perfection in terms of just trying to run away from Lemkins. He's 1.8 seconds off a dirt bounce. The only concern that Vlaeminck will have, of course, is the fact that Mercedes can be quite thirsty on fuel with that V8. We see Jonathan Collins here flash his lights and coming on through with Collins there. It is the case. We do have a little bit further back. That's Richard Stanton trying to come on through, but he does have Peter Lemkins between the two of them, and Collins, I think, was a little bit worried about how that could have played down, but Ryan has worked out for Stanton and also for Collins in the end as they made their way through it. And Richard Stanton has actually lost a bit of ground on Jonathan Collins by catching the GT3 traffic as he has, as they make the way down into the Regia chicane. And as they do, we see what is there one of the racing team Astra Orange drivers, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is Davide Favo, who right now has in his rearview mirror flashing his lights. That is Diede De Vlaeminck, and the GT3 AM driver will be just hoping that the Pro comes on through in quick order and down the straights. That way Davide Favo does not lose too much time, because I can tell you that right now Kurt Van Hoornakke is gradually gaining on Davide Favo by what is the best part of approximately half a second to a second a lap, and the Audi R8 driver, who we see just going through the camera shot there, he'll be at the rear of the picture as they come down Seraglio. He is closing on Favo for the final podium position of the GT3 AM class very rapidly indeed. Now, as they roll on through here, of course, in terms of what our drivers have got to worry about in terms of tyres and fuel, it's purely fuel they've got to worry about here. The tyres seem to last very well at Monza, but it is going to be a major concern with respect to the fuel. But meanwhile, we can see Diede De Boever here, the GT3 AM leader, and as they make the way down, where's the start-finish straight, you can see 8 tenths of a second clear, in fact 7 tenths of a second clear of Tristan Dino Brega, and right now the change by DB2 driver will be thinking to himself, what do I have to do to break away and have a day where Tristan Dino Brega is not over the back of me, because right now Dino Brega has come through the GT3 field very rapidly, and as they make their way into Retividio, the gap between the two of them is now down to less than half a second. As we ride on board here with Dino Brega, he's all over the back of De Boever as they make their way up towards Regia. Now surely, if he's going to go for a move, this could be an opportunity, and you can see already De Boever looking at potentially putting the car in the middle of the road. He's giving those signs he's going to make that car as wide as possible, but Dino Brega's got the run here into the braking zone, but he has to back out in the end. He hasn't quite got the run to be fully alongside. They both rolling through what is there, the Regia chicane, and Dino Brega a bit out of sorts. De Boever getting the better run, but to be fair, Dino Brega has a lot of time to play with here to go for the move. It's not as though we're in the final 5 minutes of the race. We're not even 20 minutes into this race so far. And as they make the way through Lesmo 2 here, it's the case that Dino Brega just needs to bide his time and wait for that opportunity. Now, whilst this is happening, I can tell you that Chris Keenan's had an off track and has dropped all the way down from what was at the time P4 in the GT3 AM class down to P6, which is unfortunate for Chris Keenan. But a brief mistake that has cost him dearly, but we continue to stay here with the two leaders in the GT3 AM class. And as they roll on through at Sky, we're hitting the Paul Walton set the fastest lap in the LMP2 AM class, 35.797. He's opened up his lead to 13 seconds. As we see there, where's the LMP2 at Baz Meacham going on through, but now Tristan Dino Brega can start to think about potential movements. Parabolica, no, he backs out here. Instead, he's going to wait for that opportunity as both drivers understeer there into Parabolica, and you can see Diede De Boever missed the apex, but got back on the power sooner. Tristan Dino Brega went for a very late apex due to the understeer, under braking, and therefore he's not going to have as much speed in the run down towards turn 1. He is in the draft, but I don't think it's going to be enough here unless he really goes late on the brakes. He could dare to dream. De Boever cuts the inside here to defend. Diede De Vlaeminck's going to go to the outside. Will they be side by side on the break? And they will be indeed. Diede De Vlaeminck's going to try and hold it outside to inside. De Boever squeeze him as much as they can. But it is the case. It's clean between the two of them. A little bit of a rub door to door, but nothing major. And as they make their way out to 2 and down towards turn number 3, they're still side by side here. But Diede De Vlaeminck's got a slight edge as they roll through Curva Grande. Now you can see De Boever's coming on back. We're sure to run through the corner. And as they come up towards Regis chicane into the braking zone, Diede De Vlaeminck on the inside braking line once more here. And as they come into the corner, can De Boever make it too wide all the way through? He does indeed. It's great racing between the two of them, but a little bit unsettled there, De Boever, as they make the way out of the corner. And Diede De Vlaeminck has got the move done in the end. But look at that. That goes to show you, you can go side by side through Rettifilio and Regia and have great racing as well. And Diede De Vlaeminck in the end, and De Boever kept it clean, but Diede De Vlaeminck has got himself into the lead. Now, can he break away? That is the question. Or will Navarro De Boever be spurred on by this and come back stronger as they make the way down towards where's the Ascari? Because they make the way on down right now. It does look as though Diede De Boever is not being dropped here by Diede De Vlaeminck as they come on through, and with 20 minutes of this race complete, by the time they do get through Parabolica Curve, it is the case there's still plenty to go. And will we see a potential reactionary pit stop from Navarro De Boever? Will he decide to go for the undercut suddenly? I think right now to go for the undercut would be to his detriment, because you can look at the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen, and these two are in a world of their own at the front of the GT3 class as a whole. And yes, let me just remind you, they are at the front of the GT3 class as a whole. The two GT3 AM drivers here, you would think they were the two GT3 pros with the way they're racing, but right now these two GT3 AMs really future stars in Next Gen Racing Series and indeed in iRacing Series in general, and both enjoying the racing here as they make their way down the start finish straight onto another lap. It looks though Navarro De Boever is just not quite able to mount the comeback here as they make their way into where's the 21st minute of the race here at Monza. But as they run through it, we do look up to Jonathan Collins, who right now is battling with Richard Stanton for P4 in the LMP2 AM class here. Collins in P5 trying to go on the offensive as we say hello to Phil McDougall there, who loved the racing between the two GT3 AM leaders. Indeed, we loved it as well. And right now Jonathan Collins tries to go on the offensive. He's going to look for the move. He's going to have a very good run down Ciriclio, and he's on the inside, and in fact I think he's already got his nose ahead before the braking zone, but you can be sure Richard Stanton's going to hold it all the way around the outside. And my good lord, Collins there I think was caught so much by surprise he almost lost the rear end there for Ascari. And well, Richard Stanton, you have to give the man credit. He may not be up there contesting wins, but he is defending like a winner right now. And I can tell the privateer there, that took a lot of bravery to hang the car around the outside and force Collins to have to back off, but he got it done, and he holds on to P4 for a little bit longer as they make their way onto another lap. And Paul Williams is only the best part of 2 seconds up the road to him right now. I think Richard Stanton would hope that he can close up to the third place man in class as they make their way towards the end of a lap and on to another. And as they come running down the straight, I can tell you that meanwhile a battle brewing is a P2 in where's the GT3 Pro class, and it's Diede De Vlaeminck versus Peter Lemkins as they roll their way through the Ascari chicane. And as they come down towards what is Parabolica Curve here, it is the case that Diede De Vlaeminck, well, he's not quite fast enough to go for a move, which sounds a bit to the contrary with regards to that Mercedes being so strong on the straights. But to be fair, Vlaeminck at this point may be thinking, you know what, with dirt bounce only 1.2 seconds up the road, I don't really need to try and fight my way past Peter Lemkins right now. In fact, I can short shift behind the Ferrari in front of me, which in turn is in the draft of the Mercedes in front of it, and I can do a lot of fuel saving. As we ride on board here, Diede De Vlaeminck, let's see if we can tell whether he's doing any short shifting. We definitely wasn't short shifting there. He was literally on the limiter, because that's why he had the red light in his dashboard and the centre console to say you need to upshift now as you're going to bounce off the limiter. I think Vlaeminck then may not be short shifting. Perhaps he's just simply not able to carry the speed through the corners because of the double draft of the two cars in front. But as he makes his way all the way down towards what is at Curva Grande here, once again it is a situation where Vlaeminck just falling off a little bit as they make the way up towards the Turn 4-5 complex known as the Regia chicane. But meanwhile, whilst this is going on, we do have pit stops starting to occur. We've got Paul Walton in from the lead of this race overall, the RD Sim Sport driver at the LMP2 AM class. Paul Scott also coming in as he makes his way down the pit lane here. We've got a couple more drivers coming in. We've also got Paul Williams in the rear of the picture. We've got Richard Stanton, Jonathan Collins. They're all coming in the LMP2s, all at what is the 22.5 minutes to 23-minute mark. And they're all deciding they haven't got the fuel to go any further. And this is where we now start to ask the question, Is it a 2-stop or is it a 1-stop race? We will find out in due course. We've also got their Gus Rankin and Liam Tack into the pits, although Liam Tack, I think, has just come out to the pit, so he's taken his pit stop nice and early, and we've also got Gus Rankin tucked in behind it. Is the TGC Racing driver now going to be able to break away, or will it be the case that he'll feel a bit of pressure from Gus Rankin as they make their way down towards turn number 1? You can see that Elwyn Sykes has just got out ahead of what is Liam Tack, but Elwyn Sykes, of course, in that major instant at turn at number 6 on the opening lap, where the car with damage just would not turn for the right-hander, and so he's trying to recover this race as soon as possible. But meanwhile, we look back to the pit lane here, and Paul Scott has got out ahead of Richard Stanton, but I do believe Paul Scott was ahead coming into the pits. But meanwhile, Paul Williams, well, he's just come out ahead of Richard Stanton, but it's not by much, and Jonathan Collins has not been able to jump Richard Stanton through the pits. It is the case they are 2 by 2 once again, and as they make their way down towards turn number 1, Richard Stanton in P4, Jonathan Collins P5, and Baz Meacham has come out in P6, but a bit further back, to be fair, compared to where he was. And in fact, Jim Stanton has now got up to P6 as a result, and Baz Meacham just not having the right day of racing here today at Monza at all. As they roll them through, it is the case that we do look back up to what is our GT3 class leaders here in that close battle as they make the way out of Regia. And whilst they are continuing to contest this lead, we do actually need to look to the pit lane. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for the cameras bouncing around a little bit here. As you can see, Meg is out the pit lane right now, is one Diede De Vlaeminck, and as he makes his way up to speed, he has jumped ahead of Dirt Bouch. You can see that is Vlaeminck, and then Dirt Bouch, who was our leader in the GT3 Pro class, has come out behind him. Peter Lemkins stayed out on circuit. He did not pit, should be pointed out, Peter Lemkins, but that means that Diede De Vlaeminck has gained 1 place through the pit window, and now will we see Peter Lemkins come in and lose the lead to Diede De Vlaeminck? If so, then that means that Vlaeminck has done this perfectly, and I think actually he was doing the fuel saving before we looked at him, because Ryan Hayes put a lot less fuel in the car compared to Dirt Bounce, and now the Belgian has just got to put in an absolutely brilliant outlap. And if Peter Lemkins comes in at the end of the next lap, which I'm sure he will as a reaction, it will be the case that the Change by DB1 driver here could be on his way to a win in the class. We'll have to wait and see. There's still a long way to go. Of course, we've got plenty of time still remaining in this race, but right now Vlaeminck looking very, very assured as they come on through, and into the pit comes our leaders in the GT3 AM class. All the pit stops are happening early here, and it's Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck and Navarro De Boever. Diede De Vlaeminck already in his pit box, De Boever a little bit further down. You can see them both parking up, and well, we now wait to see which one of them will have the faster stop of the two. As we continue to wait, we do look down to a little bit further down the order. We see James Slates here in the heavily wounded Audi R8 for RP Motorsport Pro-Am. Will he be coming in? I reckon he will be. He'll feel as though he's done enough to get himself into the ideal pit target window as he makes his way in. Lorenzo Gualtieri has come in from P3 in the GT3 AM class as well. James Slates is in. Chris Keenan's the next driver, albeit 14.2 seconds down. But meanwhile, Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck is leaving the pit lane now, and meanwhile so is Navarro De Boever, and the two of them are swapped places, and it is the case that Navarro De Boever through, taking a shorter pit stop here, may have put a little bit less fuel in the car. Perhaps he's been doing some fuel saving by comparison with Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck. It is the case that changed by DB2 driver. It's back into the lead. Well, he's got it done on strategy, but now he has the Goliath task of 33.5 minutes plus the final lap of this race of keeping Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck behind him. The gap between the two of them, 2 seconds, and I don't think it's going to be long before Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck starts to close that gap in incrementally, unless Navarro De Boever now really puts the hammer down. Perhaps he was holding back, to be fair, when he was passed previously. Perhaps he was just trying to hold on to the position but save fuel, and perhaps now we will see the real pace come out the car. Meanwhile, I can tell you that after his pit stop, Kurt van Hernacker has come back out in P3 in the GT3 AM class, and changed by DB2 driver. He is 3 seconds ahead of Lorenzo Gualtieri, who we see here. So Gualtieri right now gaining time and gaining places overall, but the Racing Team Astra Orange driver has got some way to go to close up to Van Hernacker, who is 3 seconds up the road. And as they make the way through what is the Regia chicane, it is the case that the Lamborghini Huracan driver doing everything in his power to close up to the back of the drivers in front to get the drive down the straight and improve that lap time even more, improve that overall race time as he makes his way through what is the second of the two Lesmos. Now as he comes rolling on through, we do look back up to what is our LMP2 class, and in particular to Jonathan Collins, who continues to try and mount that pressure on the back of Richard Stanton as they roll on through. Oh my goodness, and Jonathan Collins there just taking a bit too much speed, under braking into the Regia chicane, and in doing so causing the rear of the car to come around very aggressively. Fortunately for him, he didn't beach it up on the sausage curve, which we did see happen to a couple of drivers in the Apex Racing Academy lobby at the Red Montevideo chicane earlier this week, but Jonathan Collins there with a near miss in terms of what could have been a race-ending moment, but the privateer now will know he cannot carry that much speed into Regia. You could see just how much speed he was trying to carry under braking, but the car said no, and the rear simply said, I'm going to go round and you're coming with me. And as he makes his way down Cerro and in towards Ascari, I think his heart might be in his mouth right now, thinking to himself, right, I've now got 2.6 seconds to close up to Stanton, rather than just 0.8 of a second as he makes his way down towards Parabolica Curve. But to be fair, he will take some inspiration from the fact he can see Stanton right in front of him, and they make the way on down. But meanwhile, we look from them to a little bit further up, so further down the order to James Slates here, who's chasing after Elwyn Sykes. Now that Slates has got the car repaired, the Audi R8 driver here may have an opportunity to go on the offensive in short order as they roll them down the start-finish straight. They can't run them down, of course, and as they do, the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver here, we know he is very fast. He's really built up pace since the series has come to Europe, and as he rolls his way through the chicane, going a bit deep there on the braking, to be fair, that's going to cost him about 0.3 of a second. He will, I think, in short order, be right within the rail tracks of Elwyn Sykes and looking to take that P5 off of him as they make the way on round through Curva Grande. And that gives us a great opportunity to take a quick sip of water. But as James Slates here rolls on through, we do look up to the leaders of the GT3 AM class, and we can see here Navarro De Boever, in fact, with a little bit of pressure, Paul Walton behind him, the LMP2 AM class leader, and as they make the way down the back straight here towards Parabolica Curve. To be fair, Navarro De Boever, they're being given a bit of a grace period. The gap between the two of them before they came into Ascari was 0.8 of a second, but De Boever's got the gap over to 1.4 with the fact that Paul Walton caught Diede De Vlaeminck right on the entry into Ascari, and so Diede De Vlaeminck had to back out. But it does look as though Diede De Vlaeminck right now really is flying compared to Navarro De Boever, and that's the case. I think that battle between the two of them is going to kick off once again within the next couple of laps, because it is looking as though right now Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck, and based on the previous lap time as well, even though he lost that 0.5 of a second through Ascari, Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck still put in a lap that was faster than Navarro De Boever there, so it is Tristan Diede De Vlaeminck who really is on the charge. And as they come rolling on through, it is the case being on the charge here. We can see that James Slates on the charge to look for a move past Elwyn Sykes. Elwyn Sykes goes a bit deep through Parabolica Curve, and as a result, now James Slates will have the run as they come out the corner. Meanwhile, we have to look a bit further in front because we can see that Richard Stanton here under pressure from Jonathan Collins once again, and it's going to be Collins who looks left, he looks right, and he looks back to left once again as they make the way down towards the braking zone here for what is turns one, and Richard Stanton has to defend this hard as they come through. Lucas Romano just in front. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see James Slates out the inside of Elwyn Sykes as they make the way through, and James Slates with a classic pass through Montevideo chicane, gets that P5 for Elwyn Sykes, and he cruises on through and now pushes onwards to hunt down Lorenzo Gualtieri, who is 18 seconds up the road. I think that might be a bigger gap to close down at this point. It may be the case that James Slates is thinking about that P5 and consolidating it, but then we look back to Richard Stanton here, who has still got Collins and also Jim Stanton there behind. The two Stanton brothers trying to help one another out, and Jim Stanton's going to be the inside of Collins into the Lesbos, and as they make the way through Lesbo 1, Jim Stanton's got the move done. Now will Collins come back in late braking fashion? No, he does not. He waits instead. Instead it's going to be all about the run down towards Parabolica, and as they make the way on through, it does look as though at this point that Jim Stanton here trying to stay with his brother Richard and run away from Jonathan Collins, but Collins will be aware of that and he will tuck into the slipstream and try to benefit from the double toe as they make the way through Ascari and down towards Parabolica very shortly. They roll on through as we come to the end of the 32nd minute of racing, and it is the case we've got 28 minutes to go plus the final lap here in Monza in the feature race, and it's all in the cards with regards to the battle for P4 in the LMP2 AM class. We see Jim Stanton so close now to the back of Richard Stanton as they roll on through Parabolica Curve, in so close. In fact, I think it was the case that Jim's had to roll a little bit wide there to try and bleed off some speed, and as they make their way down here, and we're hearing that Jeremy De Boever has jumped to the pit lane. I think it's a retirement for Jeremy De Boever with technical issues with the Mercedes, which is very unfortunate. You can see here it is the case all the LMP2 drivers coming on through in very rapid fashion, going past Mark Sykes, who's running the last of the GT3 AMs in P10 after that opening lap incident. But as they make the way on through and on towards what is Curva Grande here, will we see that potential move from the second of the two Stanton brothers here. They're going to be side by side coming through Curva Grande, or just about. Jim Stanton's looking for the move. I think he's going to send it up into Regia, and as they make the way in, yep, there is the move. Jim Stanton on the inside, but his brother's not backing out, and in fact Richard Stanton says no you don't, And as they come on out here, well, this little bit of fighting between the two of them means that Collins is now right back into the mix as they roll them through at Lesbo 1. And as they come through the right hand here, you can imagine that Jonathan Collins with another very on edge moment there. Just a little bit of oversteer quarter exit, just taking a bit too much exit curve and causing the car to unsettle. And now they've got an absolute plethora of GT3 traffic there as they make their way past Lorenzo Gualtieri and also Kurt Van Hoornacker. They weave in and out of the GT3s down the Seraglio curve straight, and as they make their way in towards the braking zone, Jonathan Collins is impeded in by Van Hoornacker, who's just taken his race, to be fair, so Collins can't do anything about this other than be patient. And as they make their way down towards Parabolica, it's brought the two Stanton brothers some time to sort things out, but meanwhile they make their way on down. We do look to Elwin Sykes, who chased after James Slates right now, is continuing to try and close on up. But meanwhile, the battle for the GT3 AM class lead has stabilised around 1.4 seconds to 1.3 seconds between Navarro De Boever and Tristan Niedenbrega. We're keeping our eyes on that, but it does look as though right now Elwin Sykes trying to come back at James Slates later on in this race, and just a bit up the road from them, Lorenzo Gualtieri is closing on Kurt Van Hoornacker, and will have been aided by the fact that Kurt Van Hoornacker was really compromised with the LMPs coming on through as they make the way down towards turns 1 and 2. Once again, heavy on the brakes they go into Rettivilio, and it does look as though Gualtieri really starting to pile on the pressure as they make the way up towards Curva Grande and then at Regia. But as they charge them through here, it is the case that Gualtieri just continues to inch closer and closer with each and every yard we ride on board here with what is the GT3 AM driver from Racing Team Astra Orange. We're looking to move here. He's inching closer, but surely if he's going to go for it, it's going to be very late. He thinks about it. He thinks about trailing off the brakes there. I think that would have been very dangerous to try and do it. He could have gone for it. That would have relied on Van Hoornacker, expecting it to come and open the steering at the last minute. But Van Hoornacker stays ahead for the time being. As Gualtieri there turns in nice and early for the Lesbos. Van Hoornacker goes a little bit wide, but they both stay as they were as they roll through Lesbo 2. And Van Hoornacker goes a bit deep off the apex there. But to be fair, the Audi very sensitive to those curves versus the Lamborghini, and as they make the way down Seraglio here it comes. The move, he'll be looking to the inside as they make the way towards Ascari. It's Gualtieri on the right, Van Hoornacker on the left. Into the braking zone they go. And will Gualtieri be able to get it done? The answer seems to be yes, because they roll them through the Ascari chicane. Gualtieri is able to carry the momentum through, and Van Hoornacker is nowhere to be seen in terms of the run-back fight, coming all the way towards Parabolica. That gap is already up to 6/10 of a second almost. I think Van Hoornacker is trying to do a bit of fuel saving here and preserve the car for later in the race. We will wait and see as they make the way down towards Parabolica curve. As they roll them through, it is the case we look back up to the battle between Jim Stanton and Richard Stanton, and it does look as though it's been settled for the time being, with Jim Stanton now 2 seconds ahead of his brother as they make their way out of the opening chicane, albeit Jim Stanton's got a bit of traffic here, and that's not just any kind of traffic, I should point out. That's the battle for the GT3 AM class lead between Navarro De Boever and Tristan Niedenbrega. They are 20 seconds clear of their peers, and that is in the form of Lorenzo Gualtieri in P3, and right now it's going to come to a dead heat between these two as they make the way into Regia here. You can see Navarro De Boever just goes a little bit deeper in the chicane, and as they make their way in towards the Lesbos there, where it looks like Navarro De Boever just received a tap on the rear end from Tristan Niedenbrega. I did see the brake light go on there very briefly. I'm wondering if Navarro De Boever felt as though the car was unsettled and stamped on the brake. Well, that's going to be a little bit of an odd one. I think Tristan Niedenbrega was caught by a surprise seeing that brake light appear when it did, but as they make their way out of Lesbo 2, it is the case they make their way down Seraglio and come rolling on 2. It is the case that we can see coming up into Ascari. Well, ahead of them, we've got Richard Stanton battling with Jonathan Collins. They roll them through the left-hander here, and well, Richard Stanton looking to hold off Collins, but Collins getting ever closer as they roll them through. But meanwhile, we do look back to this battle between the GT3 AM leaders here, the two championship contenders, as they make their way down towards turn 11, and you're going to see Tristan Niedenbrega's going to look up the inside. He's going to have the mother of all runs as they roll down in towards Parabolica's braking zone, and as they do, Tristan Niedenbrega on the inside, Navarro De Boever on the outside, but Navarro De Boever here will have the better exit run. He'll have more space to play with, but as they come on out of the corner here, it's now going to be a drag race. Now, will Navarro De Boever tuck back in behind, or will he stay alongside? He's going to do the latter rather than the former. It will be a run all the way down towards turn 1, down towards Rettivilio they go, into the braking zone. Niedenbrega on the inside, meanwhile De Boever on the outside, into the braking zones they go, both of them braking as late as they dare here, trying to outfox the other one, but in the end, it's the case. There's still space, and there's a bit of contact between the two of them there, and well, Tristan Niedenbrega given a little bit of a tap wide, and I think he will feel as though he'd done enough to be able to shut the door, and I think Navarro De Boever would argue well, the door was still open, and he went for it, and by going for it, bit of contact between the two of them. Not too much heavy damage by the looks of things, but Navarro De Boever now 1.6 seconds clear, and Tristan De Vrega's got it all to do again. There's definitely arms and elbows out here between these two, and you can understand why to an extent. They both want this championship lead as much as they dare, given the fact that this is going to be the last round in the sequence of 4 before we head to a super endurance round, which is all up for grabs in a single race. And particularly for Navarro De Boever, after that instant with James Slates in what was the sprint race, he cannot afford to finish behind Tristan De Vrega in this race as well, because otherwise he will lose out massive ground in the hunt for that championship lead in the GT3 AM class. But he's going to have to be careful, of course, because little knocks, bumps and scrapes will maybe be overlooked by the stewards, but anything beyond that will start to get closely inspected. And as he rolls his way through Ascari here, it is the case that De Vrega will now be looking to come back. But as they roll them through there, we do say hello to Pantaluca in the YouTube chat as they make the way down towards turn number 11. And as they roll on through, here it is the case that we do see Davide Favo making his way in that hot pursuit of what is Liam Tack here, the Racing Team Astra Orange driver, having had a difficult race so far, but it does look as though the GT3 AM driver trying to come through. And meanwhile, whilst all this is happening, I can tell you that as he tries to go around the outside of Richard Stanton, Jonathan Collins has broke himself into the braking zone for Rettifidio, and Collins just cannot find a way past Richard Stanton. As they make the way through turn 3 and up towards 4-5, it is the case that Jonathan Collins here, well, he's going to be close up to Stanton. To be fair, the statistics don't lie. Jonathan Collins has got a lot of pace versus Richard Stanton on a clean lap. The problem is, it seems that when he gets into that dirty air and when he gets into that battle, Richard Stanton just seems to have the cooler head of the two. It's not to say that Collins doesn't have a calm temperament and he can't find a way on past, but it just seems as though Stanton seems to know exactly where to put his car every time to frustrate Jonathan Collins, and that locking up of the brakes into Rettifidio will only hurt Collins in the long run, because of course it could put the risk of flat spot in the tyres to a degree, and will take some more life out of the tyres most definitely, and also the brakes. But meanwhile, we look to Davide Favo here, who's battling with Liam Tack for P7 in the GT3 AM class. They make the way down towards turns 1 and 2, under braking they go into Rettifidio. Favo on the inside, Liam Tack on the outside here, and will Favo outbrakes his opponent and then gets the door shut before they go into the turn 2 apex, and that is how you get it done. The Racing Team Astra Orange Strike giving us a brilliant example of how to make the pass into turns 1 and 2, and now breaking away and charging after Elwin Sykes, his teammate, who is 11 seconds up the road in P6. Liam Tack will try and come on back, but I think Liam Tack at this point will be focusing more on just running the race to its conclusion and then trying to close up to the drivers in front as the race evolves a little bit later on. As they roll through the corners here, it is the case that with 19 minutes to go plus the final lap, we do look from these guys back up to what is Kurtman Harnacker chasing after what is Lorenzo Gualtieri here, and we're changed by DB2 driver. Well, he's on the hunt, but the gap between the two of them keeps oscillating. And speaking of oscillating gaps, well, that gap has been coming down very rapidly indeed. And once again, it's the battle for the GT3 AM lead. We saw the two of them come together into turns 1 and 2 last time, and this time it's a case that Navarro De Boever goes late to defend to the inside. Tristan De Vrega has to go to the outside. Navarro De Boever outbrakes him, locks up the brakes, and lifts off the ABS there just in time to get the car to stop. But Navarro De Boever is literally throwing everything at this to keep Tristan De Vrega at bay, and as they make their way in towards Curva Grande, you can see De Boever just making that Ferrari so wide that Tristan De Vrega's got to think every time about where he puts the car. And as they make their way in the run up towards Regia here, it's going to be De Vrega on the inside, De Boever on the outside, under braking they go into the chicane, and as they make their way through, it's too wide. And it looks like there's a little bit of contact there between the two of them, unless I'm mistaken, albeit it didn't look like it on screen. That may have been a little bit of latency contact, because it definitely looked as though Tristan De Vrega got a little bit of a tap there, and as he had to open the steering wheel, thinking that Navarro De Boever would be launched off the curve. That's a little bit of an odd one there. I think that may be some netcode contact, ladies and gentlemen, which does happen in iRacing. But Tristan De Vrega is once again made to stay in P2 for the time being, and he's still got 18 minutes to go, however, and he's still no doubt going to keep on sending it to try and find his way on through. But as they come charging on through, it is the case that running down in towards Ascari, well, now what will De Vrega do for the third time of asking when he battles his way? I think what he's going to have to do is try to think of how he can make Navarro De Boever make a mistake. It seems as though if he's going to go toe-to-toe, it's like two boxers, you can imagine, whereby every time they up-front trade blows, it seems as though Navarro De Boever just has that ability to take one more blow compared to Tristan Di Brega in the boxing ring, albeit we don't want them to take pieces off the cars, I should point out, ladies and gentlemen. It is purely an analogy. But I think what has to happen here is the case that Tristan Di Brega needs to be smart. He needs to bob and weave with regards to his movement on circuit and think about how he can get into the head of Navarro De Boever and get the change by DB2 driver to make a mistake under braking, get him to miss a braking point, get him to miss putting the throttle on or miss an apex, and if he does, that may give him the right to come through and take the lead and run away with it before Navarro De Boever can come on back. But as we see here, Jonathan Collins in P6, well, he's dropped off the back of Richard Stanton. He's got a long way to go to try and close on back up. But meanwhile, we can see here Kurt Van Hoornacker trying to go on the offensive versus Gualtieri. The gap between the two of them is 0.8 of a second, and he is still holding around there. It seems though these two lapping equally, and to be fair, that last time around, the difference between the two of them, only 0.02 of a second in terms of lap time. They're exchanging lap times, they're exchanging trading shares on the stock market floor, because as they make the way on through right now, both parties are not really gaining from it, gaining on one another, and still they're trying to break the deadlock. But as they roll them through, coming there through at Regia, it is the case that Elwin Sykes, so look outside my commentary box window, has come into the pits. Remember, he did have that early pit stop to do repair work to the car, so he is going to drop a long way down the order. He's dropped down to P8 in the class as we understand it, and well, as he makes his way out the pit lane, I think he might be at risk of being passed by Chris Keenan, who's in P9 in the GT3 AM class, as they make their way up to speed. But as they do, we do have now the third bout of the battle for the lead after the pit stops between Navarro De Boever and Tristan Di Brega. You can see here Di Brega now really flashing his lights. I think it's the case. Right, if it's going to be this way, I've got to find a way on through it. If it requires a little bit of distraction and discretion, so be it, because they roll their way through at turn number 1. You can see behind them, that is Diede De Vlaeminck, the leader in the GT3 Pro class, number changed by DB1 driver. Now, can he get involved in this battle? That will be the question as well. Can he find a way to get himself in there and potentially help out his sister team's driver? It has to be wondered whether they're thinking about that right now as they make the way down towards turn number 1. They come roaring on down in towards the braking zone here, and as they do, Navarro De Boever holds on for the time being. You can see Tristan Di Brega getting very close on the braking there, just releasing the brake to inch a bit closer, which you can do, of course, as long as you keep it off the back of your opponent's car. And Tristan Di Brega seemingly just right there on the limit in terms of hugging the back of that Ferrari as they make their way through the corners, and as they make their way out to Curva Grande, it is the case they'll very shortly head down towards the Regia chicane. Into the braking zone they come, and as they make their way in here, Di Brega simply holds back for now as they roll on through, and as they do, Navarro De Boever under that pressure, and well, it does look as though he's had a bad run out of Regia, and this time Tristan Di Brega is going to be on the inside into the first of two Lesbos. They go side by side here, and as they make the way on through, it's the case that Tristan Di Brega has the inside into Lesbo too. Now surely he's got this done for the time being, but he's got to be worried about the run out the corner, and you can see here how Navarro De Boever and also there with Diede De Vlaeminck are stacked up behind Di Brega as they make their way down Cerro Clio, and this is going to be almost 3 wide. Well, Diede De Vlaeminck backs out in the end, but Tristan Di Brega is going to hold it on the inside versus De Boever. Into Ascari they go, and as they do, goodness me, there's contact between the two of them, and Navarro De Boever is turned sideways, rejoins however, but I think it's the case that Di Brega there may have been thinking, well, if you're not going to give me the respect through some of the corners, I'm going to show you the same level of respect. That's the only thing I can think of, ladies and gentlemen, but it's definitely the case that now the gloves are off between the two of them, and well, Tristan Di Brega there into the lead, but I think the shooters will be taking a look at the racing conduct between the two of them after the race, as we see they come out of what is Parabolica there, and a little bit of contact between Di Brega and also Vlaeminck. I think that may be the case that now the contacts are starting to build up on those Ferraris, and therefore they've got a bit of damage on the cars as they make the way down the start finish straight here. But my goodness, definitely it is the case. The two championship contenders, well, we've seen championship contenders in real life come together before at Monza, thinking in particular to Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, albeit they ended up with parking the cars on top of one another, as we do see there Diede De Vlaeminck coming on past what is Tristan Di Brega, and well, as they make their way out of Parabolica Curve. Now I think Vlaeminck will want to just simply unless he's thinking about trying to simply back Diede De Vlaeminck back up into what would be Navarro De Boever, but I think that would be at the cost of his own race to Peter Lemkens, to be fair, and it looks so it's going to be 3 wide almost down in towards Regier as Peter Lemkens looks on a move on Diede De Vlaeminck, and he can't quite find it, but what this will definitely do is it will push Vlaeminck away from the battle for the GT3 AM lead, and as they roll on through the Lesbos here is the case, and as they come through turns 6 and 7 very shortly, well, we've got battles of the GT3 class leads literally in front of one another, with the pros battling at the head of the pack and then the AMs just behind as they make the way down Circle Lane. You can see there Paul Scott flashing his lights furiously as if to say, look, I'm just a bystander here coming through, do whatever you do it after I've passed you, I don't want my race compromised. And as they make their way down to the braking zone, my goodness, it's literally 4 cars nose to tail, 2 battles for the lead nose to tail, and as they make their way on through here, it's brilliant stuff, albeit the elbows are getting out quite a bit, and as they make their way down towards turn 11 right now, we ride on board always the gearbox here at Diede De Vlaeminck. You can see the raw guttural power of that Mercedes just able to break away from the Ferrari in the run up towards Parabolica. But it's through these apexes where things will go a little bit the other way as we, oh goodness me, and well, it looks as though then Navarro De Boever coming in very hot down into Parabolica, curved out the inside, and Tristan De Vlaeminck simply giving him the space to do so, thinking that he'll outfox himself. But now as they make the way down the start finish straight, well, Navarro De Boever's back into the lead for the time being, but how long it be before Diede De Vlaeminck comes back at him in very short order. And as they roll their way down in towards turn number 1 and 2, I can see in the chat there it is getting a little bit uncivil in the YouTube chat. Just keep it civil, guys, as best you can. I know there's a few tempers in there with regards to what's happening right now, but as they make the way out of turns 1 and 2 and down towards where's the Regier chicane once again, the battling continues all the way through as they make the way up towards Regier. But with 11 minutes to go, I don't think it's over yet in these 2 battles. There's no doubt about that. You can see Paul Williams coming through there, P3 in where's the LMP2 AM class as they all make their way through in the snake trail through the Regier chicane. And as they do, well, we ride on board with Tristan De Vlaeminck here, who's at the back of the train and really right now is looking to get past the one man in front of him who has frustrated him. And I think it's all about now trying to do it on the smarts. They've both had their contacts, they've both had their moments where their elbows have come out and knocked one another about, but now it's the case. It comes down to the sense and sensibility and just trying to find a way through in the cleanest way possible if they can. But as they make the way down the straight, it is the case, heading all the way down towards Ascari once again here into the braking zone. And of course, this run in such formation, all of them pushing to their utmost, it does make you wonder whether they could be starting to look at the fuel tank gauge and think, have I got enough fuel to go to the end? Do I need to back the car off? We'll wait to see it. Speaking of someone coming into the pit, we've got Sean Scooter coming into the pits, looking out of our pit box window, and commentary box window I should say, and as we can see here, it's the case of Navarro De Boever trying to find his way past Peter Lemkens into Parabolic. He's going to go for it, it's Navarro De Boever, and you can understand why there's a tiny bit of a tap there between the two of them. What he wants to do, he wants to get that pro between them, so that way he can run in the tyre Diede De Vlaeminck and simply keep Peter Lemkens behind, given the fact they're all in Ferraris here, still all have equivalent straight line speed. But as they make their way down into the braking zone, it is the case that Peter Lemkens, the GT3 Pro driver, is trying to come back at the AM of Navarro De Boever. They are all squirming for the position here. Into the braking zone they go, and Peter Lemkens just finds his way over. There's contact between the two, and Navarro De Boever turns Peter Lemkens into the wall. Well, this is definitely, I think, getting to a situation whereby after this race they're going to have to tell people to calm it down, because this is now getting to a point where that is a driver into the wall. It didn't need to happen. I think it's a few tempers are flying, ladies and gentlemen, with just over 9 minutes to go plus the final lap. But I can imagine now with that happening, well, Peter Lemkens will be absolutely furious. He's jumped to the pits already, and I think it's the case. Well, it's a retirement for Peter Lemkens. He is not happy, and he is out of that car, and I can completely understand why as they make the way on through. As we see here, Navarro De Boever now with Tristan De Vlaeminck right behind him, and he's going to have the toe, of course, of Diede De Vlaeminck in front of him. That may potentially help here. This is the closest battle on circuit by a considerable margin. There's no other battles really happening right now. The rest of the field has spaced out to an extent, but as they make the way down towards turns 8 through to 10, you can see De Vlaeminck looking for the move on the inside. They came together here earlier, and not quite at this time. Diede De Boever looked to the move just to try and feint De Boever into going deep, but it didn't work out. Instead, Diede De Boever now has to build up a bit more momentum as they make the way on down. But as we take a quick look round the field, it is the case. You can see here race leader in the LMP2 AM class, Paul Walton. Well, he's having no such dramas or battles here. 35 seconds clear of the rest of his class and just running on through to the conclusion right now. He just needs to manage the car from start to finish, and he's doing so admirably. But as we see him making his way on down, we do look back to this battle for the GT3 AM class lead. And well, we would love to have seen the two pros duking it out as well, but it wasn't to be. And as they make their way down towards what is turns 1 and 2 onto what is their 29th lap of this circuit in this feature race, 8 minutes remaining, time still ticking down. It is the case. Well, what is going to happen when it's all said and done? We will have to wait and see. Indeed, it is going to be absolutely close between these drivers, as I can imagine it's going to be absolutely close on the fuel tanks for a number of drivers, particularly those in the LMP2s. We've only had Jim Stanton coming for a second stop so far. Otherwise, all of our LMP2 AM drivers are all only made the one pit stop, and they will all be very close on fuel by the end of it, no doubt, if they're all trying to do a one stop here. It is possible, but it requires a huge amount of fuel saving and car management. But we can see here, speaking of car management, Diede De Boever right now managing that lead, but I think it's more Tristan Diede De Boever also waiting to pounce, and I think he's going to wait until the very end of the race now. I think he's going to save it all up for the last couple of laps, for the simple reason, the more these guys battle now, the more they're going to be dragging other cars into this. But also on top of that, it will only take one major incident between these two and it will see their race completely spoiled. And I think once they get towards the end of the race, when it's all go, it'll be the case. It's all about who is going to back off and not want to see the result go away as they make the way through Ascari. And well, we have seen it in real world motorsport. We've seen it in sim racing series, of course. If any of you want to remember back to what was the opening season of the Next Gen Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione GT3 Championship, you'll remember that horrific incident going through at what was Hawthorne's at Brands Hatch between the two leaders, which saw them both take one another out of the race right at the end of the race. We've seen in real world racing, such as for example Prost versus Senna, albeit that was two teammates. I don't think we're going to get to that level of rivalry. Well, I hope we don't get to that, otherwise it's going to be the case that it's going to be fisticuffs at dawn. But right now we can definitely see that Diede De Boever here are really pushing on hard versus De Boever, and both of them want this win. And well, for what is Diede De Boever, he's got more to lose by not bringing home the win here versus Tristan Diede De Boever, as Diede De Boever looks at potential move down to the braking zone for turn 1 once again. But as they do, it is the case, Diede De Boever holds it firm for now as they make the way on out through the corner. But as they do and head all the way up towards turns 4 and 5, it is the case that right now they stay as they were with 5.5 minutes remaining. Meanwhile, looking from these drivers, we do see Dirk Bounce here. Well, he's currently the RP Motorsport senior driver, the Belgian. He's running EMP2 in the class and looking very happy with how things are going right now. He is 10.5 seconds of what's happening up front with Diede De Vlaeminck right at the front of the field. But you can imagine Dirk Bounce, I think, will take this P2 and he will take it with open arms gladly, given the fact that this has been a really good run of form for the Mercedes driver. Of course, the Mercedes very strong here at Monza, but you've got to take the circuits where the car is strong and put it right up there, and he's definitely doing that. But meanwhile, being right up there, we ride on board the gearbox here of Diede De Boever as he tries to continue to stay right up there in the GT3 AM class versus Tristan Diede De Boever. As we also hear that Paul Williams has just set a personal best of his race at 36.4, and well, that's not close enough to take fastest lap, but it is one of the faster laps that we've seen within the LMP2 AM class. As they roll through here, really this is the main battle all the way to the finish by looks of things, ladies and gentlemen. And well, we're getting a bit of a ball run through Ascari there, and Diede De Boever is going to be close. Will he look for the move? We'll wait and see. It looks as though it's going to be a defence from De Boever as they make the way on down. Indeed, he's going to have to hold that inside line. Now, will he go deep? No, he keeps it very close to the apex curve here, and that will mean that Diede De Boever has to back the car out, and as they roll their way, we should say, out of the final corner and head down towards the start-finish line. Well, I think this is the opportunity that Diede De Boever will be looking for. He's got a lot of momentum here, and Diede De Boever has to go to the inside run to turn 1 very early. They make the way down towards the braking zone, and as they head in there, it's going to be side by side almost, and you can see that Tristan Diede De Boever is just gradually easing the brakes off there to try and get alongside. He feels, and I think what it is with Tristan Diede De Boever, I think he's mastered what is the heavy braking initially into the opening chicane, and then just being able to lift the brakes off and carry the speed, and that's where he's gaining in terms of the cornering zones, particularly those heavy braking zones. it's the case he really gains in those subsectors where there's heavy braking zones, and it's because he's just able to roll the car off the brakes a bit more gradually compared to Diede De Boever by looks of things, and that is what's enabling him to really mount that pressure. And as they roll on through there, through Regia once more, it is the case that now with 3.5 minutes to go, these two notice how they come running through the first two Lesmos, and now, well, you can see it behind them, that is Baz Meacham, who is trying to chase after Jonathan Collins, but the gap there is 21 seconds, and I think that's going to be quite the gap to close down the remainder of the time, unless it's the case he's able to essentially have Collins make an instant and close up through that, but we will wait and see. As we say hello to Paul Scott in the YouTube chat there, and well, speaking of Paul Scott, currently P2, 38 seconds off the leader, but I think just trying to bring this one to its conclusion now, given the gap he has got to Paul Williams behind of what is 7 seconds. He'll look to come home at P2, the best of the rest. But meanwhile, we do look here to what is, oh goodness me, it looks as though everyone's trying to sort one another out here in the run down towards Parabolica Curve. Well, that's Chris Keenan and Baz Meacham coming through the foreground. We've got Diede De Vlaeminck and Paul Walton tucking in behind, and well, Paul Walton, you can understand, he won't want to get involved in any of this. He'll just want to come on through when he's got the clearance to do so and stay clear of the GT3s. He just wants his win in the LMP AM class and be said and done with it. But meanwhile, when he can see the battle for the lead in another class is going on around him, I think he'll be more worried about the two drivers around him trying to take each other off and therefore take him off in the process than he will about trying to put in the ultimate laps right now. Understandable, when you're that far in front, you don't want anything to go wrong, but they go on to another lap here. All of our drivers do, and as they roll them through in towards Retvilio, no change once again for the time being. But we're 2 minutes now on the clock. We do look to Lucas Romano down in P3 here in the GT3 Pro class. And Lucas Romano, well, he's been in one of those races whereby in the sprint race taking that result, but there was a bit of contact with Jeremy De Boever. But this race, it's been the case. It's been a relatively quiet race for Lucas Romano, and he's just been rolling through to P3. And I think he will take that podium position, and that will give him a good placement in the championship going into the Super Endurance round at Spa next week as he makes his way through what is the Parabolica, not the Parabolica Curve, my apologies, I'll wash my mouth out with soap. Going through Curva Grande or Curva Bazzano there, and now heading down towards Regia. We're not at the end of the lap, we're just at the start of it as he makes his way into the braking zone. But as he rolls on through here, it is the case. We can see it, Lucas Romano just keeping it together, nice and clean and tidy. And Gus Franken, the sister team's RP Motorsport senior driver there in P4, and well, he is currently the Dutchman running around just off the podium, but in a good run nonetheless. As we hear that Jonathan Collins into the pit lane from what was at the time P5, and well, that is for fuel to take him to the finish, and that's going to cost him an extra 20 seconds of race time, and that is what happens with the 2-stop. It catches you out, and it catches you if you can't make the 1-stop. And well, meanwhile, we do look back to that battle for what is the GT3 AM class win. As we can see here, Navarro de Boever still holding on. Now, Paul Walton has just gone on to another lap. He's gone on to the final lap of this race, so it will mean we've got one more lap for all of our drivers here, and now it will all come down to a last lap battle between Navarro de Boever and Tristan Niederbregger. And I think we're going to be seeing it already because they made their way down the start finish straight. You can see there Diede De Vlaeminck falling back into the picture as well. So it's the case they come into the braking zone where they're going to be boxing in. Where's Tristan Niederbregger into the outside line, into the chicane, where it does look so much changed by Diede, really playing this the team tactics as they make their way out to the chicane. And Navarro de Boever holding the position for now as they roll the way on through, heading through turn number 3 and up towards Regia. Now, will they play that again into the next heavy braking zone? Because they've identified, as we talked about earlier, that is where Tristan Niederbregger really gains in those heavy braking zones. Under the gantry board they go, and as they make the way down into the braking zone here, and no attempt to pass by Niederbregger, he's going to have to wait for later on in the lap as we hit the hour, and the checker flag will be out the next time our overall leader comes on around, and all of our drivers come around behind him. And as we can see here, Navarro de Boever holding on in the closing stage as the sun has gone away, the clouds are coming over, and as they make the way in towards Lesmo 2, there's not much time to go. It's Richard Stanton into the pit on what is the penultimate lap for him, and that is going to be a pit stop. That may put him finishing a lap down effectively to the leader when it's all said and done. And speaking of the leader, well, as he makes his way through the final corner here, the RD Simsport driver Paul Walton has started this one. He made his way up to P2 on the opening lap, took the lead shortly after, and he's going to make it 2 out of 2 once again. So he crosses the line. He is your winner in the LMP2 AM class. Paul Walton from the United Kingdom for RD Simsport. He finishes 48 seconds clear of Paul Scott. But meanwhile, we must come to that battle of what is the GT3 AM class, and our GT3 Pro leader just ahead of them, because he comes through what is the final corner here with them changed by DB1 outfit. Lost Jeremy De Boever early on, but Diede De Vlaeminck has picked up the pieces and he's going to pick up the all-important points. He is your winner here at Monza in the feature race. Diede De Vlaeminck from Belgium takes the win in the GT3 Pro class with Navarro De Boever behind in the GT3 AM class, taking the win. And then changed by DB2 and Tristan Niederbreger in the end coming home in P2 in the GT3 AM class. And then it will be the case Dirtbouts comes home taking what is second place in the GT3 Pro class. A well-deserved result for the RP Motorsport senior driver, and it will be Lorenzo Gualtieri who completes the GT3 AM podium ahead of Lucas Romano there, who takes the third place on the GT3 Pro podium. Meanwhile, having crossed the line off camera, but there they are. There is Paul Scott from NXTGEN Racing, who has taken P2 in the LMP2 AM class ahead of Paul Williams for Team Tetra in the LMP2 AM class. And well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 3 Pauls all on the podium together in the LMP2 AM class. There was a running joke after the race last time out that they would all end up on the podium, and they've managed to achieve it this time out. They've managed to get 3 Pauls on the podium, and well, there is a little bit of a record with regards to what is the record books for names on the podium. But meanwhile, we're also hearing in the chat there from what is Lucas Romano and also Jeremy De Boever, we're hearing that Diede De Vlaeminck has picked up a drive-through penalty which he wasn't able to serve out on track, and as a result, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to correct the results there. It will be Dirtbouts who takes the win in the GT3 Pro class, with the RP Motorsport senior driver will be thinking to himself at this point, well, I didn't expect that. I think that will mean that Lucas Romano is going to take what is P2, and I think Vlaeminck will take P3 unless I'm very much mistaken. But thank you for clarifying that there, Lucas Romano and also Jeremy De Boever. And well, Dirtbouts in the end, I think this will be a surprise, but a welcome one to be sure for him, in the fact that in the end the RP Motorsport senior driver, I think that's his first win in this series today, and well, what a way to pick it up at a circuit where he's had an absolutely brilliant pair of races. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. Indeed, I think there might be a few. So it is the case that after our second race here at Monza in round number 7 of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, the IMB Raceway Lobby, that's Lobby 2, Paul Walton in the end taking the overall win for RD Sim Sport ahead of what is Paul Scott, and indeed Paul Walton taking the win in the LMP2 AM class ahead of Paul Scott, and Paul Williams completing the LMP2 AM podium. Richard Stanton at P4 ahead of Jonathan Collins in a great battle between the two of them from start to finish. Vance Meacham and Jim Stanton completing the LMP2 AM classification. P8 overall going to Navarro De Boever, the winner of the GT3 class overall, and in the GT3 AM class, Tristan Niederbreger finishing right behind him, second place in the GT3 AM class. And then Dirtbouts, thanks to the drive-through penalty picked up and accrued after the race of Diede De Vlaeminck, is the case that Dirtbouts in P10 is your GT3 Pro class winner. Lorenzo Gualtieri, P11, taking the last podium position in the GT3 AM class, ahead of Kurt van Hoenacker. Lucas Romano, P2 in the GT3 Pro class, P13 overall, ahead of James Slates, and then Diede De Vlaeminck, as we predicted, taking that third place on the podium in the GT3 Pro class, ahead of Davide Favo, Gus Rankin, and Liam Tack. Behind them in P19, Elwin Sykes, Chris Keenan, P20, and outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about, Mark Sykes, Sean Scudder, Peter Lemkins, and Jeremy De Boever, with Peter Lemkins with that retirement 10 laps on the finish, and Jeremy De Boever with that early retirement due to the contact early on in the race. Well, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a race we have had indeed. It was a case of some great battles, but also some battles where we saw quite a few elbows come out. But indeed, it shows how much this racing and indeed the championship means to our drivers. But we will be back very shortly for what is our post-round interviews for our selected drivers in approximately 4 to 5 minutes. But until then, don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss those interviews, I can assure you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews of our selected drivers. Unfortunately, not too many drivers available today. We could only find 2 drivers for post-round interviews, but we're going to be hearing from Dirt Bouts in the 111 Mercedes AMG in the GT3 PRO class on what has been a fantastic night and one of his best nights of the season so far, with a double podium, including a win in the feature race. An unexpected win, but a well-deserved one, to be sure. And then we'll be talking to Paul Walton, our dominant runaway winner in the LMP2 AM class, and hearing his thoughts on what was, I think, a race more about dodging traffic than it was about worrying about the guys behind, but we'll be interested to hear his perspective as well. So without further ado, we'll be bringing Dirk Bouts into our interview room. And as we bring Dirk into the interview room, Dirk, a fantastic pair of performances tonight, a third in the sprint, a win in the feature, albeit an unexpected one. How do you feel Monza has treated you this evening? And my apologies, Dirk, I think I've got a little bit of a problem with the microphones. 1 second. Apologies for that, Dirk. That's a mistake on mine. We've got that fixed. But a brilliant night for yourself. How do you feel Monza has treated you?
Monza's treated me fair and well. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. Apologies for that.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. No, it's treated me fair and well. It was interesting. You made a comment in the sprint race about me kind of hanging out there and just kind of playing it smart. Smart doesn't necessarily give me the victory, but in this case, the guys, battling at the front kind of did what they had to do, and it kind of ended up the way it ended up being. And well, I guess in this case, the smart guy kind of ran away with it, which is okay. Normally, that's not the case, but it was great for tonight.
Oh, most definitely. And, well, just dissecting your evening, starting off with qualifying, a good qualifying performance from yourself, and it looked as though that Mercedes was really hooked up there on circuit. Do you feel as though you got the best lap you could in qualifying, or was there a bit more time available?
No, I think I probably could have done a better lap, but it might have been one or two spots up, but that would have been it. So definitely not pole.
Well, indeed, whilst there was perhaps a better lap out there, even if it was not for pole, we saw you come through the order quite rapidly in terms of the sprint race, moving all the way up to and finishing in P3. Just take us through what was your approach in the sprint, given you've only got 15 minutes and you very quickly see the slipstream train, as we like to call it at Monza.
Well, I mean, my strategy is pretty much always the same. It's like try and stay out of trouble. And to be honest, when I don't, it really is because something typically ahead of me happens and I end up driving into it, but I guess I kind of never drive at 100% and therefore stay out of trouble unless something, like I just said, something ahead of me happens and I kind of run into it. So no real strategy, just trying to stay with the pack, trying to stay out of trouble, and then kind of see where it ends up. And I kind of get a kick out of trying to race as clean as we can and don't do any off tracks and just see how far we get.
Oh, most definitely. And that showed throughout the duration of the sprint race, a clean run to P3. And then going into the feature race, given the fact that you'd finished so high up the order and you'd be starting quite far towards the back in the GT3s, did that change your potential strategy, or was it always the case that you were going to run a particular strategy in the feature race?
Well, again, strategy would have been safe, but I got lucky at the beginning because it kind of got messed up with the people in front of me. I was able to drive through it. And then I kind of got into the lead where even some of my team members just kind of started, making a little bit of fun and say, wait a minute, Dirk, you're in the lead now, which, I kind of stay cool. But then I kind of messed up a little bit at the pit stop where I went ahead of Diede. He made a better pit stop. I basically took too much fuel. Again, this is me being safe, probably a little bit too safe. Therefore, I ended up being behind him, and then Peter passed me also, and then it was Peter Lemkens and Diede who kind of really fought for P1, P2, and I just kind of hang behind him and see what happened. And well, I got lucky and became first.
Oh, indeed. And on that moment after the pit stops, of course, we won't go into the incident that involved Peter Lemkens and I believe Navarro De Boever going through the Rettifilio chicane. But I do have to ask you, from your perspective, given that your sister team driver had that incident and then subsequently what was the moment where we saw that drive-through penalty added on at the end of the race for Diede De Vlaeminck. What was going through your mind when you saw sort of the drivers in front of you losing place and you thought, I'm going from P3 to the win here? Is this a miracle?
Well, slight miracle, but I mean, the P2 was obvious after what happened between Navarro and Peter, and then literally as far as like me becoming P1, I had no clue until really at the end, where actually I was informed that Diede had a drive-through that he actually couldn't make. Because even when I look now at the broadcast, I was still wondering whether I won, yes or no, because it really only became obvious at the end.
Oh, indeed. And having picked up that win, I believe your maiden win of this series, I have to ask you, what's it like driving the Mercedes GT3 around Monza? It looks absolutely planted, and also that lovely engine note, which we love from a V8.
Awesome sound, very much planted, like you say. Takes any curb you throw at it. So it's just a joy to drive it.
Oh, indeed. Well, it definitely looks as though you're enjoying yourself. And speaking of enjoying yourself, will you be enjoying yourself when you take that car for 2 hours at Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time?
If I make it, yes. I might be traveling, I might be abroad, I might actually be up in Scotland. But if that doesn't happen, then I will definitely look forward to going around Spa for 2 hours, because it's actually my favorite track. So hopefully I can make it.
Oh, we do hope you can make it, and we look forward, if you can, to seeing how you get on in the 2 hour race. But until then, congratulations on your double podium and your inaugural win tonight, Dirk, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Very much appreciate it. And just one final comment: you do an absolute awesome job on your commentary, on your broadcast, and everybody truly enjoys it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Dirk. I really appreciate that. I mean, it means a lot to me, but it's my pleasure to bring all the racing action.
Good stuff. Good luck. Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
You too. So hearing there from Dirk, that's absolutely lovely gentleman indeed. A very friendly face down in the Next Gen Racing paddock. And, well, hearing from him there with regards to what was a evening of just keeping your cool and don't do anything silly. Just stay out of trouble. And his whole philosophy really shone through there. And indeed, I think something we can all learn from. We saw in qualifying, Dirk Bouts wasn't quite up there in terms of lap time. And even his honest admission, if he had had the perfect lap, it wouldn't be enough to put him on pole by any means, but maybe gained in 1 or 2 places. But in the end, just staying in the slipstream train, gaining the places at the misfortunes of others and seizing the places when he could, finishing P3, and then again staying out of trouble in the feature, jumping into the lead gradually through strategy. And, well, when he lost out by taking a bit too much fuel, of course he didn't have to worry about managing fuel to the end of the race. Instead, he just had to stay there and, well, potentially take the win come the end. And of course, with Peter Lemkins being taken off circuit, and also what's Diede De Vlaeminck's penalty post-race, it was the case that Dirk Bouts was there to pick up all the points. Nobody wanted the crown other than Dirk Bouts himself, and he's taken it for his inaugural win. And I do hope he's able to come to the circuit of Spa in a week's time, so it'd be great to see him in the AMG and see what he can achieve there. But speaking of achievements, we must now come to Paul Walton, who, after an absolutely dominant run tonight, well, he must be thinking right now that advantage he's building up to Stephan Wessels is an advantage which surely is unassailable. Well, let's get his perspective on it. So as we bring up Paul Walton into the interview box here, Paul, an absolutely start-to-finish dominance in both races and qualifying as well. Surely it's been the perfect night in the absence of Wessels at Monza.
Yeah, honestly, when qualifying started, I was expecting it to be a bit closer. I don't mean that in like a bad way or anything, but as soon as I set the lap, I knew, okay, this is going to be a race of just building the lead, staying clean, and just staying alive, and just making the most of the absence of Wessels, unfortunately.
Oh, indeed. And just taking us through the evening, of course, this circuit being a lot about the slipstream, but we saw early on in qualifying, you put an absolutely scintillating pole lap in which you continue to improve over the course of the session, but it looks as though you hit things out of the pits running in terms of putting those lap times in. Was the car absolutely hooked up?
I managed to get, I think it was a full clean run straight away on the first lap, and that was good enough. Didn't have any traffic issues at all really in qualifying, whereas I think others did. I think in general I just got lucky with the clean air and then just drove a good qualifying.
Oh, indeed. And that qualifying, of course, putting you on pole for the purposes of the sprint race. And given how strong the slipstream here is at Monza, we saw you very quickly try and make the breakaway after the first 2 chicanes. Was that always the aim, to try and make the break through the opening 2 chicanes? Or was that a bit of a surprise to you how quickly you started to gap the field?
Going back to the start of the sprint race, when I was on pole, I was half expecting to have 6 cars behind me. into me in the first chicane because of the concertina effect, but it seemed like I got the jump on the green flag, kept it in the middle of the two cars so neither of them could get a slipstream, and then just managed to get through the chicane alive while they were all racing side by side, and then built the gap from there.
Well, indeed, and it did look as though behind you we had a three-way battle for P2 involving William Scott and also I think it was one of the Stanton brothers coming in there, but you were right at the front. But after the opening couple of corners, it looked as though you had been given the space to run away, and I presume by the end of lap 1, when you saw the gap was almost in excess of 2 seconds, were you thinking just run away with this, just keep running?
Yeah. With Monza, if you race too wide into the chicanes, both cars are losing half a second to a second. So if you're not losing that, and they are, the gap just builds from there.
And then coming on to the feature race, we saw you obviously starting towards the rear of the pack, starting at P6 with Baz Meacham starting behind you due to the race suspension in the sprint. We saw you jump all the way out to P2 come the end of the opening lap and take the lead of the class a lap later. Was that always the plan to absolutely knife your way through the order, or was it the case that it was a bit of a surprise? Because we saw you make an absolutely colossal move into P2 come the opening 2 corners.
So I like the way they have it set up. So obviously when the green flag goes, we all go at the same time, as opposed to the leader deciding when we go, because you can jump people, right? If they're sleeping, you're not sleeping, you're gone. I can't remember who it was in front of me, but as soon as it went green, I was in the middle of the track and I was ahead of them straight away, and then into second before the first corner. And then after the second chicane, the leader went off into the gravel, and then by turn 3, I was, I guess, well, not turn 3, Lesmo 1. After Lesmo 1, I was in the lead on lap 1. So at that point, it was just go.
Oh, indeed. And then by absolutely charging off, we saw you run things to the distance. Although I do have to ask, given the concern around fuel here and the preference to do a 1-stop rather than a 2-stop, was fuel always going to be a major worry in your mind, or did you have it all planned out in terms of, I know exactly how much fuel I need to get to the end and I'm just going to have enough come the finish line?
Fuel was the one thing I missed out on when I was testing. So when it come to the pit stop, it told me I needed more fuel than I had. So that's never happened before after I've actually done the pit stop. So I was panicking, just slowly trying to bring the number down. Fuel save, until it told me I had enough to finish, and then I just put the foot down. And that's when the gap went from 30 seconds to about 50 in about 20 minutes.
Well, indeed, a colossal gap in the end, and Will very well saved on the fuel to be able to then go full attack to the finish and also take the fastest lap with it. And I can see in the Facebook chat in particular, we've got Deborah Grant there saying, great race, well done, fantastic, Paul. And also Wendy Walton, I believe, your mum saying, well done, son, you're amazing. And also your dad, Paul Walton Sr., congratulating you. I do have to ask, now that we look ahead to Spa, you've got quite the championship lead over Stephan Wessels, but we do have the drop score round as well. How are you feeling for Spa Francorchamps, 2 hours of racing there? Do you think it's going to be a close one?
I do, actually, providing both of us can keep it on the road, because I know Stefan had an unlucky race at Hockenheimring. That would have been another close race. But providing we both keep it going, like, I mean, I died at Red Bull Ring, and that ended my race. It's going to be close. And I can rely on Stefan. He puts the hours in, he puts the practice in to keep me honest. And I definitely think he's going to put up a good challenge, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, we are too. But until then, congratulations on what has been a perfect night of racing from yourself tonight, Paul. 2 wins back-to-back plus pole position in qualifying. And we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time. Thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a lovely evening. So hearing there from Paul Walton, and I think it is the case he's thinking tonight that he's grabbed those key points with respect to what is the absence of Stephan Wessels. And to be fair, whilst he didn't have a driver to keep him honest, he had to keep himself honest with regards to the fuel saving and the deployment of the pace when it mattered. And again, that key point there with regards to in the sprint race, thinking that going down into turn number 1, if it were the case, it would be him and 6 drivers stacked up behind him, when in fact, everybody behind him was battling for P2 in a 3-wide scenario, and Paul Walton was given the breathing room to run away. And sometimes that's how it plays out. And Paul Walton tonight has had fortune favour him, as well as absolutely monstrous pace. Will he still have that happen at Spa, of course, because Stephan Wessels will be back at Spa, and the two of them, you can imagine, if they're both on the ball, they will both be right up there battling one another, and it'll be something we will all want to see. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of our post-round interviews, and it is time for us to wrap up the show. Thank you very much for watching tonight, and if you do want to know more about Next Gen Racing in terms of our community or what we do, be sure to head to our website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can take a look at our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a huge thank you to our partners, without whom it would not be possible to bring you this lobby of action, and that is, of course, the Lobby 2 title sponsor, IMB Racewear, their website, imbRacewear.com. And now we must wait until next time, because in a week's time, we will be landing at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium for round number 8 of the series. And whilst the racing will occur on Wednesday, the 1st of June 2022 for the IMB Raceway Lobby, we'll be bringing you all the racing action as if it were live on Friday, the 3rd of June 2022. Will it be the case that Walton is able to continue to extend that championship lead, or will Wessels reel him in? Will it be the case in the GT3 Pro class that Lucas Romano and Diede De Vlaeminck will go toe-to-toe, or will Jeremy De Boever be in there as well? And in the GT3 AM class, what will be the next turn in the tail between the AM Championship rivals of Tristan Lindberger and Navarro De Boever? All that and more in a week's time, but until then, that is all we have time for now. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We have been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, have a great weekend ahead. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.